Hey guys, welcome back to channel. What if Naruto and Rias secretly dating were couple in durig chunin exam? This is part 1, and if you want more then please leave a like, share and subscribe. Let's get in the video. If defined by its true meaning written in the dictionaries of her world, was a pure and strong feeling that you feel towards someone whose happiness has suddenly become more important to you than your own. The most notable example of this sensation was that of God, a being who loved his children more than he loved himself. According to the tales inscribed in the books of the underworld, the infamous God of heaven was supposed to be the creator of this feeling and bestowed it upon his children so that they too would be able to relish the elixir that was love. It was because of him and the emotion known as love, that entities of his world were finally able to settle down in a false peace. If not for love, then they would have been fighting with each other for eternity. Then why is my life completely devoid of it? Rias whispered to herself, her face contouring into a scowl as she gazed at the stars in the skies above. They were looking as beautiful as ever, and just like the old times, she couldn't see a flicker of defect there. They were flawless, and why wouldn't they be? They were supposed to be serene and strong after all. Strong. Sadness overwhelmed the admiration as she remembered the deception she was put in by the members of her family. They ruined my life, the red-haired girl whispered to herself. Clearly recalling the injustice that was done to her for no rational reason. For my entire life they scolded me to be a strong devil like them, but before I could become one, they threw me with that monster like I was some sort of a worthless object. Tears welled up in her eyes, but before they could fall and taint the ground, she wiped them away. They were of no use now. If they couldn't change her life in the past, then she was sure they won't change it now either. Now her whole life was in control of someone else, someone who she barely knew anything about. The only thing she knew about him was that he's a strong devil, and if she wanted to stay safe under his care then she needed to control her emotions and follow his orders. These trivial emotions like sadness and anger were her biggest enemy and would make her life a living hell if she didn't learn to control them sooner. Rias could still remember what her mother-in-law had told her when she had first met her. If you want to be happy like me and your mother, then you have to understand that you are a part of Riser's life from now on. Understand that, and he will always be nice to you. Rias knew her mother-in-law was lying when she uttered those words to her. There was no way she could be happy under a man who saw women as if they were some sort of rare collectibles. Never. She could never be happy with him. But what other choice do I have? Her current life was nothing more of a tragedy. Never in her scariest dream did she imagine that she would be forced to live a life with a man that viewed her as an object created to satiate his lust. Rias hated it. She hated it with all her heart, yet she couldn't run away from it as it was her only way of surviving now. What used to be a girl embellished with bright feathers of freedom and contentment was now turned into a creature that wanted nothing but a sweet release from death. It's all because of me. I should have never backed off that day. Rias admonished herself for the 1000th time for not having the courage that day. I should have jumped off that bridge. At least then I could have been free of all the troubles in my past. Her soft-spoken words went unheard as usual, and her heart sank even deeper into the veil of sadness. Thud. Every thought left her mind as soon as the odd sound of footsteps reached her ears. Lady Rias. How many times do I have to tell you that you should leave your apartment without notifying me? A familiar voice made itself known to the girl. I was given the duty to look after you, and when you vanish like that, everyone holds me accountable for it. The monotonous voice of the individual made Rias even sadder, as they were the living proof of what her life was slowly turning into. A hell. I didn't want anyone to follow me here, Mahai. Just tell me why you are here and leave. The incoherent sigh that Mahai let out didn't go unheard by Rias. But after living with her for so long, she had gotten used to it. They were like fake threats that meant nothing. Don't act like you are the one in control, Lady Rias. We both know Master Riser controls everything, and when he hears that you have left your apartment without me, he gets very possessive. Unlike her warnings, the fear in Mahai's voice was genuine, but still, it had no visible effect on Rias as the girl continued to stare at the beautiful dark skies. An almost invisible smile appeared on Rias' face when she heard Mahai sigh in defeat. If there was one thing that made her boring life somewhat positive, then it was annoying Mahai for no reason. It was always nice to see the poor girl shiver and seethe because of her. Anyway, I just wanted to inform you that Lord Beelzebub has granted your wish to move your peerage members under your mother's care. They no longer belong to you, which means that they are no longer included in the marriage contract. Now that shocked Rias to her very core. Did she hear it right? Lady Rias. Did her beloved brother actually do something by going against their father? Lady Rias, you there? Kiba, Gasper, Kaneko, and Akano. Tears welled up in her eyes again, and this time she did nothing to stop them from falling to the ground. Lady. Mahai stopped midway through her sentence when her ears picked up the sound of Rias' sobs. Eyes down in remorse and respect, she turned her face away from the girl in order to hide her shame. Slave or not, she was still a girl and could feel everything that Rias was feeling at the moment. I am sorry, Lady Rias. With that thought in mind, she began to walk away from the girl, only to be stopped by her mid-stride. Thank you for informing me about it, Mahai. Mahai's lips quivered as she tried to hold back her whimpers. You're welcome, Lady Rias. Rias apartment. What are you going to do with your daughter, Lord Gremory? I don't know, Marvin, she is good for nothing without that power. I know, that's why I asked. Master, without that power, her importance in that contract is almost nothing, she brings nothing of value to that union. I know, but there is nothing we can do about it, my friend. Her uselessness has brought nothing but shame to our house in the past few years. I am afraid that she will only tarnish our reputation further after the marriage. That is somewhat slam. Silence claimed the room after the sound of glass shattering echoed from the walls of the large and lavish chamber. Just look at her, Marvin, she is so pathetic, Master. Please don't interrupt me this time, I want to vent out my frustration, so let me have a moment with my daughter. As you wish, Master, Rias. A pair of beautiful blue eyes looked away in shame and fear as they found themselves cornered by the cold gaze of an individual who once used to see as her own with fondness and admiration. Why are you so weak, Rias? Why aren't you like your mother and brother? Tell me, please tell me. Tears began to well up within them, bestowing them with an unusual charm of innocence and guilt. Look at me, my child, she couldn't, look at me, please. A sliver of hope and courage sparked inside her when she heard her father's vulnerable voice. Maybe, just maybe for once, he was being nice to her. Look at me, you pathetic excuse for a devil. Pain surged through her mind as the cold words of her father entered her ears. Do you know how ashamed I feel whenever I meet my friends and talk about you? It always ends up with them making jokes about me and my position in our society. Your weakness is ridiculed everywhere I go. Rias whimpered as the bitter words of her father settled inside her mind. He was right, it was all because of her. They say that you are nothing without that power, and that fact makes me angry. Her eyes turned towards the ground and glanced at her small hands. If only I had that power, she thought as she tried to suppress her cries from her father. Without the power of destruction and strong magic, she was nothing. They were the pride of her family, a symbol that had made them so commendable in the underworld. That is all she had, nothing more, nothing less. Sometimes I think, I should have sent you somewhere far before anyone could have known about you and your weakness. At least then I could have saved our family from embarrassment by telling these people that I have no daughter. And no daughter. Tears began to fall from her eyes and stained the bright marble floor beneath her as the bitter realization finally dawned upon her. It was all futile, wasn't it? Her pleas, her cries, and even her precious tears meant nothing to anyone. For them, she was nothing but a pathetic weak girl who should never have been born into their family. Maybe after your marriage, you'll be able to live a life devoid of shame. Pain and grief got replaced by fear as soon as Rias heard those unpleasant words. Marriage, she was going to be married to someone she didn't even know. She would become a slave, an existence worse than death itself. From what she had heard from her caretaker, the boy she was going to be married to was the worst of the worst. He was everything she despised. He's just like my father. From what I have heard, the younger son of Lord Phoenix is a brilliant lad. I think he'll be able to control you better than your mother and brother. Control. Rias remaining will crumble down in a second as flashes of her once feasible dreams began to appear in front of her eyes. They were beautiful and were the source of her conviction. It was because of them, she continued to live a life devoid of love and happiness. They were more important than everything for her, as accomplishing them meant being on the same level as her brother, something for which she was ready to sacrifice everything. But soon in a few years, she'll be left with nothing but despair and remorse. Her lips began to quiver as thoughts of her future life began to fill her mind. They were vile and vicious, completely opposite to what she wanted her life to be. No. No. Ooh no. Draped in a thin layer of sweat and tears, Ria's face tightened a little as her dull blue eyes snapped open in shock, and began to stare at the white ceiling above. The white plaster wall, the cold blue floor, and the white ceiling above, they were all looking menacing and brazen. It was as if they were taunting her for her failures, dreams that she couldn't achieve. Even the colors mocked her, the pureness and innocence of white, robbed from her life by her husband, the serenity, stability, inspiration, wisdom, or health of blue, walked upon just like the floor. You will be free from this contract, Rias, I promise you that. Out of all the painful memories hidden inside her brain, a long-forgotten one decided to make itself known again after so many years. Brother. A spark of anger flared within her heart as she recognized the owner of the voice in her mind. It was him, an individual who she used to adore the most, one who had promised to free her from her shackles. It was because of him, she began to dream those false dreams. He was the one who promised to help her earn the freedom she so much wanted to achieve. If not for her brother, Rias would have never been what she was right now. He gave her false hope and she adopted it without a second thought. I should have never told him about my dream. Maybe then I could have been like you, Baluna, a puppet without dreams. Rias shook her head and muttered something under her breath. What am I thinking? She whispered. False as they might be, her dreams of freedom were still the only thing that had helped her endure her sad childhood. If not for them, she would have given up the hope a long time ago. So instead of being angry at her brother, she should be thankful to him as he was the one who gave her that hope. In her sad and depressing childhood, her brother and mother were her only anchor that kept her safe from drowning in the sea of death. Unlike her, who hated her very presence, her mother and brother both loved her to no end. For them, she was their princess, someone they needed to protect at every cost. Unfortunately for them, by the time they could even help her she was already far gone from their grasps. No need to think about them now, it will only deter my mental health more. With that said, Rias left the comforts of her bed and began to walk towards the washroom. I need to meet Sona too, now that my school time is almost over. I think it's time to finally cut off ties with the human world once and for all, Rias whispered to herself while slowly rubbing away the sleep from her eyes. Ukuo Academy was huge, Rias noted idly as she stared at the huge building of concrete that was standing tall in front of her. It was beautiful, large, and full of life. The children that were going in and out of the building were only giving the establishment a more friendly touch. Although she had seen the building countless times in the past few years, no matter how much she looked at it, the view of the building could never get old in her eyes. It was and would always remain incredible and invaluable to her. Wonder where Sona is right now, she whispered to herself. Eyes still not moving away from the building, there was something serene about it. Something that had always made her calm no matter how panicked or sad she was. Maybe it's because it used to be my second home. Her statement made her flinch as she realized that she no longer would be able to call it one soon, but it still gave me many nice memories to live with. That calmed her down a little, so she decided to drop the subject for the time being. As she strolled closer to the building, her heart began to beat faster due to anxiety. She was sad. Rias wouldn't lie about that, and why wouldn't she? She had been a part of this place for so long and now she was being forced to say goodbye to it by people who didn't even know anything about her life and dreams. Issei-kun, you are such an impolite individual. Sona's distinct voice immediately brought Rias out of her stupor and forced her to spin towards the direction of the sound. Huh? Rias blinked at the odd scene in front of her. A smile daring to blossom on her lips as she saw the forced smile on Sona's face. The girl was having a hard time with the boy. The expression on her face was a clear giveaway for that. Poor Sona. She wanted to laugh at her, but even if she tried to, Rias knew she wouldn't be able to muster up a laugh now. The times when she could laugh at her with her friends without a care in the world were long gone. Now, the only thing she could do was flash a fake smile at them. Bucko, you were embarrassing me in front of Rias-senpai. It wasn't that big of a deal anyway, I just complimented her breasts. Rias' focus turned towards the boy, Issei, as soon as she laid her eyes on him. A wave of familiar energy blinded her vision. He is even stronger now. She couldn't help but notice as she tried to recollect her thoughts. I am glad he is doing fine with his life. The last time I saw him, he was rather indecent and was having various problems in his life. Maybe Sona helped him sort out things. Rias' thoughts then took an unusual turn as she recalled the time she had avoided the chance to get him into her peerage. It was a rather effortless opportunity to capitalize on, but for some reason, she didn't. Rias couldn't bring herself to include another individual in her peerage, only to see him suffer later on in the match against Riser. Sure, he had a sacred gear inside him, but even that would have changed nothing. Her defeat was inevitable and she wanted no one else to be a part of it. But now that I look at him, I can't help but think, did I make a mistake by not getting him in my peerage? Her eyes turned towards him again, but this time instead of getting thwarted by that energy, she was welcomed by nothing but a shallow pond of lust and sinful thoughts. Maybe not. What are you looking at, Rias? Rias' thoughts were yet again obstructed by Sona, who was now walking towards her with Issei closely following her behind. Are you looking at Issei? If yes, then please don't. Issei-kun already has a huge problem with girls and I don't want you to give him any second thoughts by staring at him like that. The way Sona phrased that statement was odd considering she was supposed to be a calm and well-mannered individual. At that moment, she sounded like she was being cold to her, something that confused Rias a little as she had never seen her friend do that. I was not staring at him, Sona, I was just thinking about something else. By something else do you mean your marriage with that man? Sona's words were full of contempt and anger, or leaving this school and us alone to live somewhere you don't belong to. Sona. Rias didn't know what her friend was trying to achieve with that change in her behavior, but fortunately for her, everything became clear when Sona opened her mouth again and began to speak. President. Call me student president, Rias. I am no longer your friend. Our friendship broke up the moment you refused to accept my help that day. Sona's eyes momentarily turned over to the opposite direction where lots of students were standing and talking to each other. If you had considered me your friend, then you would have seized Issei before me, but you didn't. You rejected him, just like everyone else who I had offered to you before him. Rias, who was listening to every word, lowered her head in shame. Don't act all sad now, Rias. We can't change anything now, so it's better to move on from it. Sona sighed at the girl. If you are here to collect your graduation certificate, then don't worry about it. I'll send it to your home with someone from the department. Rias' eyes dilated with despair and grief as her ears picked up the sounds of Sona's footsteps. She was going away from her and she could do nothing but stare at her back hopelessly. I am sorry, Sona. She was about to leave too but stopped when Sona decided to speak out of nowhere. Also, since you have nothing to do at your home, I'll send some flyers with your certificate. Rias was about to ask why but got her answer immediately. That will give you a reason to enjoy your last day here without that girl following you. Just tell her it's an assignment from me. With that said, Sona left the vicinity with Issei, leaving a sad and somewhat glad Rias all alone to herself. Uen Naruto-kun. Naruto B. Baka. Goodbye, my one and only friend. A pair of blue eyes snapped open, staring at the vast brine of vibrant blue that was swashing beneath him wildly, just like the blood inside his heart. Blood? He knew that thing. It was red, just like their lips and eyes. He had seen that thing, flowing like an untamed river alongside the corpses of his friends, left behind to decay and be eaten by scavengers that roamed the land. Their lives held no values, at least not in the eyes of the higher authorities who, when the time came, threw them aside like disposable tools on their path to victory. Those who were left alive to fight soon perished in what could be called one of the worst battles of his life, a battle that held his world at stake, and with the world at stake, sacrifices were inevitable, and so they were made and made very quickly. Thousands lost their lives to keep what they deemed to be precious alive. Some held their families precious while others considered the safety of their village the topmost priority. He was one of them too, fighting alongside those to protect what he considered precious, his friends. They were his everything. His whole life revolved around them, especially those two, his beloved teammates, Sasuke and Sakura. Even the mention of their names brought up those painful memories that he had been trying to suppress for all these years. Why? Because those memories reminded him just how badly he had failed as a savior, as a shinobi, but most importantly as a friend. He was supposed to protect them. My life is no longer worth living. I don't deserve to after letting everyone down, he whispered in a steel voice, daring not to step back from what he was about to do. There was no reason to continue on anymore, especially in this entirely different realm. He had achieved what he was delegated to do in his own world. Now, the only thing that was left for him to attain was death, a sweet and cold slumber that would take him to the beautiful place where his friends and family were waiting. I hope this time, I'll be able to meet everyone. His dull and damp eyes looked over the huge body of water for the last time before getting concealed behind the curtains of darkness, leaving behind his senses to feel the coldness of this unusual night. Words vanished from his mouth and his eyes snapped open when he heard someone's voice from behind. Man. I miss those old days, Shuro. Naruto blinked as he wiped the tears away from his eyes with the help of his sleeves. Yawa, Yamato. Those days were the best. From the sound of their voice, both men appeared to be drunk and clueless about their surroundings. That made Naruto breathe a sigh of relief. For a moment, he had thought that those two were the night patrol guards but was glad to know that wasn't the case. Sighting AW alongside our mothers and enjoying the food. Naruto was getting impatient now, especially raw, main, Hakata ramen is best man, it's out of his world. That particular statement caught Naruto's attention instantly. Ramen. He thought to himself as he slowly sat down on the solid embankments of the bridge. It's a must-try before you die, Shiro. Blue eyes widened in surprise as they followed the men until they slowly vanished into the darkness of the night, without batting an eye on him. It was as if he didn't even exist for them, but that wasn't what shocked Naruto. Instead, it was their words that attracted his attention and ignited the flames of curiosity within him. Hakata ramen. He recalled the name that man had given to the ramen. What's so special about it? His mind couldn't help but wonder how amazing the flavor of ramen could be that a man declared them to be a dish one must eat before dying. While he was busy thinking about the amazing dish he had just learned about, a gust of cold wind flew by his side and brought him out of his stupor. His mind was no longer distracted to learn more about that dish. Instead, it was back to reminiscing about the losses that he had endured during that tragic war. No, I can't waste any more time. They must be waiting for me on the other side. I can't be late. Not this time. With that unwavering conviction in his heart, Uzumaki Naruto again stood on the boundary and closed his eyes, waiting to take the last step that would emancipate him from this hell. I am sorry, everyone. Winds picked up the pace and waves began to rise in the river as Naruto lifted his feet, aiming to jump as high as he could for one last time. It would be his last jump, a jump that would release him from the bindings of his past. Hakata ramen, the most delicious ramen in the world. It's a must-try. Ramen, with shame shimmering within them, Naruto's eyes unfolded to look around his surroundings. I want to eat it, was the first thing that left his lips as he retracted his feet and sat down on the cold surface, feeling nothing but empty on the inside. I am not sure if there's ramen on the other side. Why not try it before I go? He whispered, his voice devoid of any emotions whatsoever. Was it wrong to ask for something like that while you were committing suicide? He did not know. He had never tried to kill himself before, but what he knew was that his broken heart wanted to have this ramen before dying. It can be my last wish. A small smile dared to appear on his face at that comment, but his grief-filled mind murdered it before it could even accomplish anything. Hakata ramen. It'd been a while since Naruto had touched a book, let alone read one thoroughly to get some information about what. A very popular variety of ramen. From what he had read, Hakata ramen was not a regionally limited variety of ramen and was available throughout most of the important cities of Japan. Although it first originated in the Hakata industrial area of Fukuoka City, this ramen soon became so popular that shops all around Japan began to serve it to their customers, and luckily for him, the city that he was in right now also had a shop that served this ramen too. Now where is that shop? Naruto murmured as he began to flip through the glossy pages of the massive travel guide. Countless minutes passed by, but Naruto was unable to find anything about that particular ramen shop. It was as if the shop didn't exist at all in the first place. Where is it? Sheesh, you aren't supposed to yell in a library, young man. Naruto paused and turned around to look at the person who had just interrupted his search. He was an old man, maybe in his mid-80s or something, and had a face that radiated an aura of confidence and experience. The young man was confused as to why the elder insisted on maintaining silence when the librarian wasn't near them. He knew those rules were only to be looked after if the staff was nearby. Even staff didn't follow it wholeheartedly, as the librarian girl squealed whenever Shikamaru was nearby, but an apology was given. I am sorry. In the end, it wasn't his world. It was an entirely different world and he had no clue what was going on here, nor did he care to know. No problem, my child, the old man smiled at him, a gesture that caught Naruto by surprise. There was something familiar with that man's smile. It reminded him of someone special, someone very close to his heart. Ero Sennin. And just like that, his already broken heart shattered into a billion more pieces as his mind scampered through the precious memories of that ignoramus pervert. Moisture started to amass inside his eyes, but before it could fall out, Naruto took a sharp breath and peered away from the man's nostalgic smile. The man surprised him yet again by putting a hand over his head and gently ruffling his bright blonde hair. What happened to you, boy? You look sad. Every word that man spoke pierced Naruto's heart like a sharp-edged needle. No. Naruto wasted no time in answering because the last thing he wanted was to have second thoughts about his ultimate objective. He might have toughened up on the outside, but his heart and mind were still as fragile as they used to be when he had first participated in that bloody war. I am fine, just a bit tired from traveling. His answer wasn't enough to satisfy the man as he continued to stare at him with those warm honey eyes. Sure. Finally, the man looked away and glanced at the book that he was reading. Are you an avid traveler? He asked in his elderly voice. Yeah. I have been traveling from city to city for the past few years. It was a lie and Naruto didn't think the man would fall for it, but he was thoroughly surprised when instead of laughing at his answer, the man began to flip the pages of the book. From the looks of it, it seemed like he was trying to find something inside those glossy papers, but what? He thought. His answers came in the form of a boisterous laugh from the man, a laugh that contradicted the earlier statement of the old man about being silent in the library. You were searching for Hakata tonkatsu ramen, right? The man asked. Yes, but how I was listening to your ramblings for a while now. Another muffled laugh escaped those dry lips of the man, making Naruto upset by the fact that the man was eavesdropping on his private matter. The man had a lot more in common with Jiraiya than he had previously guessed. Anyways, I don't think you will like Hakata ramen, boy. Now that took Naruto by surprise. What did the man mean by that? Why wouldn't he like Hakata tonkatsu ramen? They were supposed to be the best in the world according to those drunk men, and as far as he knew, drunk people never lied. What do you mean by that? He asked with an urgency in his voice. If this man was right, then there was no reason for him to waste any more time in this strange world. I mean, there's no competition to the original Hakata ramen that is served in Fukuoka. Nothing can beat that, not even the ones that are served in Tokyo. The words of the man finally began to make sense in a way. He is right. Naruto thought as he recalled the origin of the delicious ramen. They were first created there, so it was natural for them to taste spectacular in their home, but that didn't mean Fukuoka's Hakata ramen is different. Boy, they are a must-try. Okay, they are different. Depression began to kindle inside his mind again. How am I supposed to eat them now? He was defeated yet again, by no one but his own luck. You can visit Fukuoka. It isn't that far from here. The man's voice brought him out of his sad thoughts. Really? The man nodded. Only around 1500 km or something. Old wrinkled eyes curved down when they saw the disappointed look on the boy's face. For some reason, it made him sad. You can travel by Shinkansen, my child. It won't take that long. He tried to lighten up his mood, but unfortunately, the sadness only worsened. I don't have money, Naruto answered, surprising the man. I see. Now everything clicked inside the man's mind. The boy was poor. Then I can't help you, boy, he said, appearing truly sorry for the lack of assistance from his side. He wanted to help but sadly didn't have the money to share. Naruto nodded his head solemnly. No problem. It isn't that big of a deal anyway. I just wanted to taste it. He tried to smile at the man. He really did. But happiness was something that had left his side a long time ago. Now his lips could not even form a fake smile. What used to be a sky full of kindling smiles was now nothing but a swamp of tears. The descent of grief and pain had washed away those smiles. Well, you can try earning money. You are young and healthy. I don't think you'll find it hard to get a job here in this city. What is your age? 19. A smile materialized on the lips of the man. Excellent. You can easily get a part-time job, boy. The happiness in his voice did not last long when the boy abruptly stood up and began to walk away from him. Hey. Thank you for your time, sir. At that moment nothing more was shared between the two, but the elderly man saw everything in those blue eyes. Hopelessness. Wait. The old man shouted out, making Naruto stop in his tracks. I am sure that you must have suffered greatly to have eyes like that, but know this. The past does not exist to remind us that the future cannot be changed. It exists to remind us what the future can be. Don't lose hope, lad. You will find your happiness one day. Naruto did not respond, and continued walking out. Later that night, the air above the mountaintop was cold, so cold that even Rias was finding it difficult to stand against it. Maybe it was because of her current mental condition, or maybe it was because the nights were always colder than the days. Whatever it was, Rias was finding it hard to stand against the winds today. Speaking of nights, nights were dark too, and the darkness that they brought with them was always dreadful, so dreadful that they made her realize how lonely she was now. What used to be her favorite time of the day had now turned into a moment that she desperately wanted to ignore every time. The moon above, the stars beyond, and the stillness around no longer pleased her heart how they used to do in the past. In the past, they were her valued treasures, but now they were nothing more than reminiscences of her suffering. I wonder what my friends are doing right now, Rias whispered, hoping to get an answer from someone, but was met with nothing but heart-wrenching silence. Haha. Rias blinked when the distinct sound of teeth chattering entered her ears. Confused by the abrupt interruption by the sound, she slowly turned her head to her side and was surprised to see a boy sitting a few meters away from her. From the sounds that his mouth was making, Rias could easily deduce that he was not doing well against the cold winds. His whole body was shivering and the clothes that he was wearing could barely protect him from the cold. A part of her wanted to tell him to leave or at least get some clothes that could withstand the cold winds, but the reasonable part stopped her from doing so. Well, I am not wearing any good clothes either. A small smile bloomed on her lips as Rias took notice of her own clothes. Ordinary and modest, they were nothing more than a basic set of a white t-shirt, black leather jacket, and navy blue shorts. They were doing their job of concealing her intimate parts, but other than that everything was almost exposed to the cold winds. Ha! Her ear perked up when the identical sound from before infiltrated her ears again. Looking to her side, Rias' lips formed a scowl when she saw him again, this time shivering even more than before. The sight was hard to watch, especially when she knew that the boy would not be able to survive this night with how cold it was. Hey, stranger. She finally decided to help him. Dead and cold as she might appear on the outside, she was still Rias Gremory, and Rias could never let innocent people suffer in front of her no matter who they were. Hello. Her eyes squinted a little when she got no answer from him. Hey, stranger. She yelled again, this time a little louder, but the results were the same. Confused and concerned, she began to walk towards the boy, all while being on her guard for any uncalled attack. Thieves were a lot common in this part of Kuo, so him being one won't surprise her much. After finally reaching her destination, she began to evaluate the boy, taking note of any harm on his body, and thankfully found none. Hey, she whispered, not trying to surprise him with her presence. A cold gust of wind clashed with their bodies, making their hair dance wildly in the air. Between that dance, his deep blue orbs met her greenish blue eyes and froze her to her place. Whatever she had in her mind perished away as the emotions that were illuminating within his eyes silenced her. Just like hers, his eyes were almost barren, filled with nothing but helplessness and suffering. They were like an endless ocean of sadness, and for a moment made Rias wonder whether or not she was looking in a mirror. Yes? The boy whispered as his bright blonde hair fell back to its original state. Rias gulped, still stunned by what she had just witnessed. What? Her mind was running wild and refused to form any words to aid her in the situation she found herself in. She wanted to see them. Her mind wanted to see his eyes again. The beautiful yet similar eyes that were now concealed behind those blonde tresses of his. She wanted to see them. For a moment her mind couldn't understand what was happening to her, but eventually, the sad realization began to settle down on her. He was just like her. Rias sighed to herself and sat down beside the boy on the wooden bench, blinking slightly when the boy recoiled away from her. Are you okay? She finally asked her as she noticed that he was still shivering. Why yes. His answer might have been short and insignificant, but his fake tough and shaky voice told Rias everything she wanted to know. I see. Yet she made no effort to help him. Why? Simple, she did not know what to do. The situation she was stuck in was rather unusual, and how was she supposed to help him with his troubles when she herself was also suffering from the same problem? So disregarding the subject entirely, she went silent and turned her eyes towards the dark sky to gaze at the endless brine of stars and darkness. Huh. She tilted her head in confusion when she noticed something unusual. It is looking a little bit more bearable than before. But how? She asked herself, because a few moments ago, the sky looked soul-crushing, just how it always had been for a long time now, but now, it looked different. It was the same sky, but something about it was different. Rias' eyes widened when another gust of wind made contact with her skin, and before she could even understand what was going on, her eyes unconsciously swiveled to look at the boy's face, hoping to get another look at his eyes. She almost gasped when the boy's hair flew high in the air and moved away from his face, rewarding her with a fascinating view of his eyes again. Within those few seconds, she saw everything: his eyes, the sadness hidden within them, the tears. She saw everything. What are you looking at? Rias snapped out of her stupor and immediately looked away from the boy. And nothing, she answered, shame evident in her voice. You are already married, the boy whispered, pointing at the beautiful and expensive ring that was shining brightly on her finger, so don't try to, achoo. Rias, who was staring at her ring with sadness in her eyes, moved her attention back to his concealed face when she heard him sneeze. Here, she immediately unwrapped her jacket from her body and offered it to the boy. The two went silent for a while before the boy spoke again. I don't need that. Rias was fast to question back. Why? Because I like these cold winds. Now that rendered her silent. How could he like these winds when he is clearly suffering because of them? Rias' mind went awry again, but this time she controlled it before it could go any further. There is no need to worry about him, she finally concluded. He knew what he was doing and she had no right to stop him from doing that. With that, the two went silent again, doing what they were doing before they had indulged in that awkward conversation. Hey, stranger. After what seemed like an eternity, the boy opened his mouth again, tugging his beautiful hair backward so that he could see her clearly. Although surprised by his sudden call, Rias still didn't turn her head towards him. She did not want to look like she was interested in him or anything similar to that. How can I earn a lot of money in a short time? Although it was a question from his perspective, but for Rias, it was all she needed from him. That simple question made her understand what she so dearly wanted to know from him. He's poor and has a lot of debt. Humans were like that. Unlike devils, they didn't have an unlimited source of money, so finding themselves trapped in a financial crisis was common for them. Are you listening? Rias blinked and glanced at the boy, only to lower her head in shame when she realized that she forgot to answer his question. Yes, I was listening. She blurted out to amend her previous mistake. As for your question, I am sorry, I don't know any job that can pay you a lot of money in a short time. Her shameful expression and remorse-filled tone earned her a small smile from the boy. It's okay, he whispered and began to gaze at the stars again. Rias, who was watching his face from the side, couldn't help but feel bad for him. From what she had seen till now, the boy seemed like a decent human, and to see such a being in so much pain reminded her of herself. If you don't mind me asking, can I know why you want such a job? She asked him, no doubt interested in knowing the cause behind his troubles. The boy glanced at her for a moment before he turned his head away from her. It was as if he was contemplating something in that brief period. I want to visit Fukuoka. His answer was short and it only made Rias more curious. For what? He went silent for a few seconds. To taste the ramen there, he whispered, completely missing the conflicted look on Rias' face. Ramen? Rias hummed to herself. That wouldn't cost that much. If he really wanted to visit the place, then all he needed to do was get himself a part-time job for a month or two. You don't need that much money for it, mister. You can earn enough through part-time for that, she informed him in hopes that it might uplift his mood, but strangely, nothing happened. The boy remained as stoic as he was when she first saw him. I need to go there right now. Why? Rias frowned when the silence claimed the atmosphere around them again. She was expecting another answer in return, but all she got was the all-familiar silence. Because I want to try Hakata ramen before dying. Whatever she had in her mind vanished from there as soon as she heard his answer. What? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Did this boy just say that he was going to die after eating that ramen? She hoped not, because if that was true then it meant he was just as broken as her. I said I am going to die soon, so I want to eat Hakata ramen before dying. Lady Rias. Rias immediately moved away from the boy as soon as she heard Mahai's voice from behind. Mahai, she responded, trying to sound as natural as she could at that moment. What are you doing here, Lady Rias? Nothing, Rias answered. Then let's go back to your house. Dinner is ready. Who was that boy, Lady Rias? Mahai's question nudged Rias into a vast ocean of diverse memories, some good, others bitter. Hey, stranger. Her lips almost curved up when his voice rang inside her mind again, making it tingle with sensations that she had long forgotten. Who was he? She did not know, but he possessed something that she was very well accustomed to. Pain. When the wind blew fast and made their hair flap wildly, she was able to get a glimpse of his eyes, and there she saw them. Sadness, grief, defeat. Just like her, he was suffering too. Maybe even more, and that made her heart resonate with his. In a small and unexpected meeting, he was able to gain her interest that her husband had failed to do in all these months. Lady Rias. She blinked and stumbled upon her feet when Mahai's sharp voice surprised her. Huh? For a moment she couldn't understand what was happening around her, but after a while, she remembered everything. I don't know who he was, Mahai, she answered the girl. Oh. Rias nodded her head slowly. He was sitting very close to you, so I thought you must be his friend or something. Rias blinked. Friend. Aside from a few, Rias never had any friends. They were very hard to get and even harder to keep. In the past, she did try to make some friends and was even able to succeed in it, but ultimately decided to leave them alone when she realized that all they always did was make fun of her and taunt her. That was not how friends were supposed to be, at least not according to the book her mother gave her when she complained about not having any friends. We have reached your apartment, Lady Rias. Rias looked up and nodded her head, staring intently at the door of her apartment. It was the only place where she truly felt at home, and it broke her heart knowing that she was going to leave this place soon. Ah. Rias didn't even flinch when she heard Mahai's cry of pain and the sound of a body hitting the floor right behind her. Huh. She blinked when she heard someone's footsteps and slowly turned around to face whoever had made such a ruckus. Dead bluish-green eyes met lifeless blue as the two stared at each other, neither making a move. Give me all your money, now, Naruto whispered, his voice holding threat enough to terrify most of the people around, but to his immense surprise, instead of being shocked or weeping for her life, the girl simply stared at him for a while and then reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of that green currency. Here, she mumbled with a face as vacant as a blank paper, take it. You look like you need it more than I do, she added, maybe trying to justify her weird behavior. That threw Naruto out of the loop. How could someone just give up their money like that? He was clearly robbing her, and instead of fighting back or crying, she just gave up everything with no reaction. Maybe she is one of those rich girls who doesn't give a shit about money. In the end, he decided to not look stupid and hastily swiped the money. Done. He was about to leave before the voice of the girl halted him in his tracks. If you want, I have some more money stored in these drawers. Naruto, once again, was surprised by the strange behavior of the girl in front of him. Why was she actively offering him more money? Didn't she want to keep some for herself? What sort of person would do something like that? Not even the extremely rich do that. What do you mean? He asked, stepping a little closer to the girl. Rias blinked at the boy who was now standing exactly in front of her. Oh, I knew you wanted to do something to me the moment I saw you on the mountain. Come on, let's go to my bedroom then, she whispered and made no attempt to push the stunned boy away from herself. At this point, Naruto was seriously starting to get freaked out. Just what was wrong with this girl? First, she was sitting alone on the top of that mountain. Then she just offered him more money than she should have done in the first place, and now she was practically offering herself to him. Look, he spoke, barely managing to keep his thoughts in order in front of her. I don't want to do anything with you. I just want some money, that's all. So please, give me the money and I'll be going. He finished in hopes that the girl would finally understand his situation and let him go. He did not want to be near her anymore because if he did, the guilt inside him would kill him. For the second time that night, his words sparked something inside Rias, something that she had not felt in months, and that was confusion. A moment earlier, she had just basically given herself to him, but he did not care. From what she could deduce from his appearance and clothes was that he looked like one of those people who lived on the streets, so it only increased her confusion more because she knew she was beautiful enough that any one of them would instantly ravage her if offered, as she did to him. Getting out of the train of useless thoughts, she decided to initiate a proper conversation for the first time in a long time. How odd. She murmured with that dead voice of hers, traveling so far, just to die in the end. Her eyes gazed at the boy and for a moment, she saw guilt within them. By now, Naruto had stopped questioning what was happening. The girl clearly was not in the right state of mind, and he wanted no part of whatever madness she was in. He just wanted the money, and once he had it, he could finally taste the ramen and die in peace. It's none of your business, just give me the money already. Rias nodded and began to walk towards the counters, occasionally stealing glances at him just to make sure he did not try anything bizarre on her back. So, how are you planning to visit Fukuoka? She asked him while going through the documents stored on the counters. Huh. I mean by plane or train. Naruto went silent for a while, unable to form any sort of response to her question. What was he supposed to say anyway? He did not have any documents to travel by any means either. The entire journey would have to be taken by foot. I'll be walking mostly. He completed his answer with an awkward expression on his face. Bluish-green eyes widened a little, Walking 1,500 kilometers. It'll take you months to complete this trip then, stranger. Her words earned her an annoyed look from the boy. Naruto blinked at the familiar term. She had used it on the mountain to call him out. I know, but you don't have to worry about that. It's my problem how I'll complete this trip. Anxiety began to show up on his face again, and he knew it would not be long before he would turn back to the confused guy who met her on the mountain. He needed to get away from here as soon as possible, otherwise, his mind would start questioning her about stupid things. No. I was just wondering whether you would like to travel to Fukuoka with me or not. Rias countered his argument with a stoic face. For her, it was a win-win situation. If the boy agreed, then she would get a chance to explore and see Japan before inevitably being found and brought back to the hell that was Riser's house. If the boy disagreed, then it would not matter, she would go back and accept her fate. While Rias was busy thinking about her future, Naruto, on the other hand, was staring at her in shock. Not a moment ago, he outright told her that he was intending to commit suicide, and she still had the nerve to ask if she could accompany him. Unable to contain his curiosity anymore, he asked the girl in an inquisitive tone. Why? Do you want to kill yourself too? In answer, Rias shook her head in denial. No, I don't plan to do anything like that. I am happily married and have a good life. It's just that I have someone special living in Fukuoka whom I want to visit very badly, she answered and flashed him a fake smile. If Naruto was in his right mind, he would have instantly called out the lies that this girl was obviously spouting. However, he was not in his right mind and he truly just did not care. He was going to die anyway, so why would he care about what this strange girl wanted? If she wanted to hide her reasons, then whatever, it's not like she could do anything more to him. Fine, he acquiesced with a nod of his head, but you have to bring extra money for yourself. I won't share anything with you. Rias blinked in confusion. But it's all my money, fine. Just get your stuff and meet me outside. The girl can wake up at any given moment. Rias did not need to be told twice. There was no way she was going to miss this golden opportunity. It was a chance of a lifetime for her. Sure. Just wait a minute and it'll be ready. I only have a handful of things to pack. Outside the apartment, what the hell is wrong with my life? Naruto murmured to no one in particular as he recalled the events that had just transpired a while ago. First I fucked up the dimensional travel, then I fucked up the suicide on that bridge, and now I couldn't even perform a robbery without getting something unwanted from it. Life was playing games with him and he, like the broken man that he was, could do nothing but suffer. I swear I am going to take all her money and then we'll leave her. I am ready. Her distinct voice made him turn in her direction. Oh, for the second time in a single day, Naruto found himself appreciating the unearthly beauty of this married girl. He didn't know why, but she just looked very different from others. Maybe it was because she was rich, or maybe it was her genes, he didn't know. Overall, she was someone who, although appeared to be a human, but at the same time looked nothing like a human. Where is the money? He immediately noticed the lack of a purse in the hands of the girl. Rias smiled at him, but this time, Naruto saw right through it. It was fake. I brought a credit card instead. It is a lot more convenient than carrying a huge stack of money, and it will also make sure you don't abandon me midway through our trip. Oh, Naruto whispered, unable to hide the anger that was beginning to show up on his face now. For someone so rich, this girl was incredibly smart apparently. So shall we begin our trip now? Naruto nodded his head. The name's Naruto, he murmured after a long pause. Rias immediately replied. The two fell into silence once again as they began to walk along the empty streets of Kuo. As Naruto reached the entrance of the town, he couldn't help but note this place was not much different from the previous town he was in, Kuo. Pavements were dotted with trees and houses, which were mostly small, but a few were big enough to qualify as mansions. The similarities between the two towns were so many that for a second he thought he was back in Kuo. Kuo. He blinked and veered his eyes off to his side to look at his traveling partner. Seeing her in a visibly relaxed demeanor confused him quite a bit, but he didn't comment on that. She had seemed to be in quite a hurry to leave Kuo for some reason, but he didn't comment on it either, letting her lead the way. It was her personal matter after all, and the last thing he wanted to do before dying was to interfere with someone's personal matter. That had gotten him into enough trouble in the past. He didn't have the mental energy to go through anything like that again. Rias, the words, spoken in a soft tone, that defied the speaker's rugged looks, broke Rias out of her stupor. She hadn't been thinking about anything specific, like always. All her thoughts revolved around what ifs now. Green eyes veered over to him, rendering him silent once again. Her voice was enticing as ever, and so was her whole demeanor. It was like she was born to mesmerize people in her allures, and if the ring on her finger was anything to go by, then Naruto would say she was quite successful in putting that skill to use. Snapping out of the useless thoughts, Naruto glanced around them, taking note of the darkness that had begun to devour the sky in its gloomy grip. What is the time? Seems quite late, he whispered. Oh, it's 8 already. Looking around a bit, Rias noticed a small restaurant that should be able to take care of their dinner needs for the night, but a look at her companion made her put a hold on the decision of entering the place. He looked like an average homeless person in his current attire. Someone the staff would most likely not appreciate. A small shopping stop was in order before dinner, she decided. Naruto, she called him, and was more than appreciative when he immediately stopped whatever he was doing and glanced at her. I think we both need a change of clothes, don't you think so? She inquired, staring at him calmly as he began to assess his worn-out clothes with a sad expression on his face. Yes, she nodded her head. Then come with me. I remember seeing a small clothing store close by. You did pack other things, right? Shame shimmered within those beautiful blue eyes of his. No. Essentials. This was quite a situation for the young blonde, a shinobi, former or not. Setting out without proper provisions was practically unforgivable. I didn't have money to buy. Rias didn't need to be explained further. His embarrassed face was enough to deduce the rest of the predicament. Okay. Don't worry about it. I need to buy a new SIM card. So, she paused, if you want, I can buy clothes and other things for you as well. Sure. Just come back quickly. I'll wait for you here, Naruto said offhandedly, not even asking what a SIM card was. Huh. Her voice failed to hide her surprise. What do you mean by that? Don't you want to pick up clothes according to your preferences? She asked him. In response, Naruto shook his head gently. No, he mumbled as he sat down on the cold tiles of the footpath. I don't want to visit any shops right now. But his blue eyes met her beautiful green eyes, and for a moment, Rias found herself at a loss for words. I trust your judgment, Rias. His words managed to spark something within her again. She did not know what, but they did. I am sure you'll select fine clothes for me. Now go, otherwise, we'll be late. She nodded. Fine, I'll be back shortly. With that said, she immediately vanished into the town, daring not to look back at the strange boy who had just surprised her with his odd words. Near shop, as Rias walked along the empty road of the beautiful new town, she couldn't help but wonder just what she had gotten herself into. She wasn't supposed to do this. Journeys and joy were not for her, especially with someone whom she didn't even know at all. But he seems nice, she tried to argue with her mind, remembering how the boy had accepted her absurd proposal without putting up any sort of argument against her when they first met. Nice. The voice inside her mind snarled in repugnance. No one was nice in her world. Everyone was a monster, ready to rip out each other's souls at any given moment, and Naruto would be no different. He had already shown his true colors when he decided to rob her, and she was sure that sooner or later, he would either betray her or rape her when conditions fluctuated in his favor. It was inevitable. He doesn't seem to be that type of person. He didn't do it when I offered to let him have his way with me back when he was robbing me. He could have. She stopped when the pain inside her mind increased and reminded her of one important thing. What did she know about people? Nothing. They were an unknown variable to her. Their emotions and schemes, even more so. She could argue that she knew a little bit, but even that would be a gross exaggeration. Even her own father was a mystery to her. She knew nothing about him and the hate that he held for her. Sure, she knew it was related to her being a weak devil, but still, that much hate couldn't be there just for that reason alone. So, to say that she could trust Naruto was like saying she understood her father. It was absurd and ridiculous. Then why did I decide to follow him? She could remember that she felt wonderful when she had asked him if she could follow him, but she couldn't understand why. Why was she so happy when she had asked him? She couldn't think of an answer. The logical side of her had told her that there was freedom to be found on this path and she must take her chance when she could, and so she did, not wasting a second more than required in giving her reply. But was that the only reason? Or was there something more? Her mind had turned into a conundrum for her as multiple thoughts grew into a plethora of reasons for her current state, yet her inability to understand remained, as the right thought hadn't made itself known. Maybe I am finally going insane. She couldn't help but laugh at her own situation. What used to be a happy and fearless girl was now nothing but a broken shell of her past self. I have failed everyone, even myself. With more depressing thoughts running through her mind, Rias began to walk towards the closest shop in the vicinity, hoping to find some decent clothes for her traveling companion. He really needed them since his current clothes were nothing more than a train wreck. They were a beacon and a guaranteed ticket to the closest police station if someone were to see her with him. It wasn't long before she finally found a store that was perfect for her needs. It had everything she wanted, from essential amenities to beautiful branded clothes. Everything was laid before her eyes. Welcome to our store, ma'am. The unique yet soft voice of the shop manager brought Rias out of her strange thoughts. Wasting no time, she immediately smiled at the young lady, trying to appear as normal as she could to her. Thank you. Her lips wavered a little as she slowly entered the main section of the store. If you don't mind, is there anything specific you were looking for? The lady politely asked while walking in front of her customer, ready to assist her anytime. Rias stopped walking and slowly glimpsed at the owner of the store. What do I need? With a thoughtful look on her face, she began to assess the rather vast section with her sharp teal-colored eyes. Why was she here again? she thought to herself because couldn't remember why she was here in the first place. I trust you, Rias, I am sure you'll select fine clothes for me. A strange warm sensation flooded her whole body as she recalled the words of her companion. Clothes, I need clothes for him, she immediately answered. Clothes for whom? Just like that, the warmth abandoned her body, leaving her behind with nothing but loneliness and a strange question for which she had no answer. For who? She deliberately repeated those words. What did he mean to her? Was he a friend? She didn't think so, as he had already cleared that. Then was he an enemy? No, not an enemy either, because if he was one, then he wouldn't have helped her at all. Then what? A beautiful scowl marred her red lips. While Rias was busy arguing with herself, the shop owner was sharply inspecting her customers' clothing. To say she was pleased would be an understatement of the century. She was beyond pleased, as after so many years, she was finally going to serve a rich customer, and everyone knew what that meant. Money, an unfathomable amount of money. But to get that, she first needed to satisfy the girl's needs, so forging the brightest smile she could muster, the lady chuckled lightly. Ma'am, it's completely fine if you don't want to share any. Whatever she was about to say vanished from her mouth when her eyes caught something mesmerizing wrapped around the finger of her customer. A ring. Oh my God, she screamed at the mere sight of it. You're already married, ma'am? She looked at the stunned girl, surprise still noticeable in her voice. Why yes, the lady sighed. You are so lucky, ma'am. Lucky. Rias blinked at the woman in confusion and was about to ask her why she was behaving like that, but stopped when she followed the course of her gaze. The ring. Everything began to make sense in her mind, and soon a small smile flickered on her lips. It was hard to find people who could be this much happy for others. I don't think so. I am sure there are many others who are even luckier than me, she finally responded. The sound of small giggles echoed in the room as the owner began to laugh at Rias. Ah, you are so cute, ma'am. Anyway, if you want to buy clothes for your husband and yourself, then we have this amazing corner filled with matching luxurious and branded clothes for couples. Do you want me to show it to you? Rias could have corrected the lady again, but didn't, as she hardly cared about anything now. Her life was a tragedy in itself, and some stupid words of a stranger weren't going to change anything. Sure, she told her. Okay. And so began Rias' search for the finest clothes in that store for her husband. Phoenix Mansion Riser, you stupid boy. How could you let this happen? The head of the Phoenix house, Revan, yelled at his youngest son, cursing him for the stupid debacle his carelessness had led the Phoenix house to. Riser sighed at his father. Don't worry, father, he began, it's just a minor problem, nothing else. Revan growled loudly. Minor? What are you on, Riser? Your wife has run away with some stranger and you are telling me that it's just a minor problem. No, it's not. She is your wife, Riser. She means business. Blue met blue as Riser stood up from the luxurious chair, making his way to his father. I'll find her, he whispered in a steel voice. She is mine, father, and I don't let my things be used by someone else, especially a human. What are you going to do about it? We don't have any trace of her at the moment. At that, Riser began to laugh like a maniac, a laugh that even scared Revan for a moment. You don't have to worry about that, father, it's my problem, and his smile turned even more devious. And I'll deal with it myself. Revan still wasn't convinced. What about that boy? From what Mahai had told me, the boy doesn't appear to be normal. He was oddly very fast for a human being according to her. He tried to argue with his son. The devious smile turned sinister. Fast? Human? Oh come on, father, he is just a lowly human being. His lips trembled in excitement. Riser, I'll kill him. Ooh, the moon looks just like her eyes, pale and full of life, Naruto whispered as he stared at the beautiful illuminated pale sphere in the sky. It was mesmerizing and miserable at the same time. On one hand, it made him remember her smiles, her words, and her eyes. On the other hand, the patches on its otherwise flawless surface reminded him of the wounds that covered her body during the war and that bloody smile that she flashed before dying in his arms. You were stupid, Hyuga, you should have never loved me. I deserved none of that, he murmured silently while looking at the moon, hoping that the girl was listening to him from far above in the sky. You should have let me die that day with you. I would have been happier with that. I don't like anything here. The loneliness inside me is killing me slowly and my heart can't help but wish to join you there. Maybe then I can fall in love with you. His eyes glistened a little when his mind recalled her confession during Pain's attack. It was one of the few moments of his life where someone actually told him that they loved him. Before that, only Iruka-sensei and Ero Sennin had done that. Her confession was pure, filled with nothing but unconditional love for him. It was so genuine that for a whole week he was unable to form any response to her words. What was he supposed to say? That he didn't feel the same at that time? No, he couldn't do that to her. She was too pure and kind for that, so in the end, he just decided to remain silent about that. That was the biggest mistake of my life. If he had told her that he didn't feel the same way about her, then maybe, just maybe, She might have stopped loving him, and then she would have never sacrificed herself for him like that. He was her murderer. She died because of him and no one else. The love she held for him led her to that painful death. Out of all the deaths that happened during that war, her death was one of the most painful to watch. He could still remember her smiling face as she fell beside him with dozens of nasty splinters embedded into her back. But even on the verge of her death, she didn't forget to remind me how much she loved me. Loved you? The sudden sound of Rias' voice almost made him jump away in surprise. What? When did you come back? He stuttered, glancing around himself to find something interesting to look at. What was her deal? Whenever he's trying to act normal, she comes out of nowhere and surprises him. The redhead blinked at her partner. What do you mean? I told you I'll be back shortly, didn't I? She asked, sounding as surprised as him. Yeah, you're right. His strange behavior and those tears didn't go unnoticed by Rias. Something was troubling him. She could see it on his face, but right now, she wasn't in a position to question his personal life or his past, so she did what was the most logical thing to do at that moment, remaining silent about it. Anyway, I purchased some clothing for us. She held out the shopping bags to him. Have a look at them. If you don't like something, let me know. I will get them changed for you. His rugged hands met the soft skin of her hand as Naruto obtained the bags from her gentle grip and brought them close to his face. His blue eyes analyzed the clothes for a while before looking back at her. They are nice. His small and ridiculous reply took her by surprise. Aren't you going to try them first? What do you mean? Do you want me to try them in front of you? Rias stumbled back in embarrassment. And no, she stuttered. Her words were cut short when a pair of foreign hands grabbed her from behind and pulled her towards the offender, making sure to maintain a powerful hold around her slim waist. Well, a gust of hot malodorous breath entered her nose, making her nauseous at the mere smell of it. Look what we have here, boys. A beautiful and rich girl traveling alone with some blonde punk. The hold around her waist tightened as the man feverishly began to snag a whiff of her perfume, all while lecherously smiling at his subordinates who were standing calmly beside him. Tama-senpai, what do you think we should do with this girl? One of the subordinates asked the man as he slowly positioned himself between Rias and Naruto. Should we kill her and take the money? His slender fingers touched her soft cheeks and pinched them lightly. Or should we have some fun with her before he could completely voice out his depraved thoughts? Blood burst out of his mouth and his brown eyes rolled into his head when an abrupt backhand from Naruto viciously struck his right cheek. Everything happened so fast that for a second, the leader of the group couldn't even comprehend what just happened in front of his eyes. Thud! The unconscious body of the man fell harshly to the ground, spreading a cloud of dust around it and a sense of fear inside the minds of the unwanted guests. The leader of the group, Tama, began to shake violently as a feeling of dread swelled in his mind. For a good amount of time, he couldn't speak anything from his filthy mouth, fearing that he might anger the boy in front of him. Guys, moving slightly in his position, he glanced to his sides and gulped loudly. Go, get him. His order, unfortunately, didn't have the desired effect. Instead of charging straight towards the deadly silent boy, his juniors began to step back in fear, something that he didn't notice he was doing too until his head bumped lightly into an electric power distribution line pole. Let her go. It was the most acceptable sentence to say in that situation possible and was spoken in a very calm voice, but for the already afraid goons, it was a decree, enough to instill tyrannical authority inside their hearts. Hee. Tama's weak laughs were futile at that moment, not nearly enough to provide sufficient cover for his piss-poor bravado. Stay away from us, punk. His hands began to sweat and tainted the gorgeous dress that was covering Rias' body, leaving behind stains reeking of a degeneracy soiled in anxiety and fear. Naruto ignored his words and kept walking towards the nervous thugs. As he walked towards them, he couldn't help but notice the lack of interest in Rias' eyes. It was as if she didn't care what was happening around her. Leave her alone, but he did. Cold as he might appear these days, he was still Uzumaki Naruto, a guy who cared for his comrades, and right now, Rias was one of them. Tama gulped as he locked eyes with the blonde, and within a few seconds, he slowly withdrew his hands from the girl's waist, carefully not to trigger a further response from the boy. Powerful as he might be, he still didn't have enough power or any sort of weapon to fight with this idiot. Sure, he whispered while grinding his teeth in anger. Now leave. The grating of teeth increased as Tama watched the girl walk away from him, his eyes precisely fixed on her rear that was swaying in a hypnotizing manner. Those small and unintentional sways of her butt were like unattainable prizes and reminders of his humiliating defeat, provocatively reminding him of just what he had lost today. He could have had her all for himself, but no, the boy ruined everything. Leave. Tama growled lightly but didn't dare to oppose the order of the blonde as it would be terrible for his health. He was sure. His friends were scared for their dear lives and he wasn't faring any better either, so after gulping down the shame that had been accumulated in his throat, Tama slowly began to step back from the duo and instructed his pals to do the same. You don't know us, boy. We are Yakuza. he whispered ever so silently. We rule these dark streets of Japan, and believe me when I say you will suffer, I mean it. Scowling when he saw that his threat had absolutely no effect on the boy, he and his boys vanished into the thin air, leaving behind no trace of their presence. For a period, a tense silence suffocated the surroundings while the boy and the girl stared at each other, neither of them trying to break eye contact. It was extraordinary because without even whispering a word, a lot was said between those two. You know, after a while, Naruto finally broke the silence, his voice as calm as it was when he had first met her. I need to change my old clothes urgently because I am starting to feel a little uncomfortable in them now. Rias nodded her head, her eyes never leaving his face. Okay, I'll turn around. No, I am going to change them somewhere else, not here, you don't need to turn around or anything. A flicker of pain erupted inside her heart, rendering her silent for a moment as the burden of reality finally fell on her shoulders. He was going to abandon her, she could see that in his eyes, and why wouldn't he? A guy from Yakuza had just warned him about the painful future that was laid ahead. She was sure any sane person would have done what he was about to do right now. There was no point for him to hang around her anymore. I see. She gently smiled at him with a defeated expression on her face, trying to say her last goodbye to the boy. Okay. Naruto didn't waste any time and vanished into the darkness of the night, leaving behind a sad and miserable Rias on the cold road. Goodbye. Deep into the forest, Tama was angry. No, he was beyond angry. The emotion that was surging through his veins couldn't be described in words. It was horrible and was making him feel like he was some sort of a coward and loser, a pathetic worm who couldn't accomplish anything in his life without the help of others. Ah! He roared in humiliation, surprising his stupid subordinates who were resting quietly beside him against the trunk of a tree. I need her. Another loud growl escaped from his mouth, and just like before, no one said a single word in rebuttal. That girl. He paused in order to remember that extraordinary feeling of her smooth skin. It was so soft and felt like he was touching something out of his world. Her hips were phenomenal too, but not as much as her breasts. Those beautiful mounds of soft flesh were still instilled in his mind, and he wanted nothing but to molest them again. He wanted to knead them, suck them, and squeeze them dry. Yes, that's what he wanted to do. Leave her. Tama frowned when a familiar voice of that asshole echoed inside his mind again. That asshole. He took my fun away from me. She was supposed to be my play toy, not his fuck doll. Did you guys see how she was looking at him? Ah. Fuck that bastard, I'll show him his place soon. Nonsense was all he could speak at that moment, as there was no way he could fight that boy alone. That stupid cunt sent one of his subordinates into a coma with just a single punch, a fucking single punch. I need to call more people. Tama was horny but not without some self-preservation instincts. He could deduce any person's power with just a single glance, and he was more than sure that boy was someone whom he should avoid confronting alone at all cost. More people means more power, and then we will show him the true strength of our group. A devilish smile appeared on his lips as he began to think of the possible things he would do to that girl when he finally gets her under his grasp. He would eat her alive as he made him watch. After all, it's not every day that you see a big-breasted girl roaming carelessly in their territory. I am going to milk her dry first, and then you guys can do whatever you want to do to her, hee. Tama would have continued spewing his depraved monologue, but abruptly stopped when he noticed something unusual around him. Guys. There was silence everywhere, and no matter how hard he tried to listen, he couldn't hear anything. Not a single sound, and that made his heart race at an abnormal speed. Tama. For a moment Tama almost died of a heart attack when an eerie voice entered his ears. It was soul-sucking and emotionless. Still, for the sake of his ego, he decided to feign a show of confidence and turned around, only to come to face evil in the form of a human. What? His mouth parched and his brain went numb when, instead of seeing the familiar face of the boy, he saw the unconscious body of one of his lackeys. It was torn apart and was bleeding red from every pore on its skin. Rias? That's her name, right? A sinking feeling stirred inside his heart when the voice caressed his ears again, this time from behind, emotionless as ever. It was even scarier this time. Don't look behind, don't. He didn't know about the cat, but curiosity was going to get him killed for sure. Ah. Like a pathetic person, who couldn't do anything but watch his world wither away in front of him, Thomas screamed loudly when someone blurred right past him. It was fast, so fast that he couldn't even see it. The only way he was able to feel it was because of the wheezing of wind around him. You were going to kill me, right? No. Tama wanted to scream. He wanted to run. And most importantly, he wanted to apologize to the devil in front of him, but I can't speak anything right now. His lips were sealed due to the fear that was consuming him from the inside. In his lifetime, he had seen countless maniacs, him being one of them, but never had he seen someone so silent yet so deadly. Do it, squelch. The leader of the gang jumped away in fright and fear when red began to descend from the heavens hidden beyond the murky skies of the night. What is this? He held out his hand and skimmed it through the untamed downpour to palm a few drops of the red liquid. Caressing them a little between his fingers, he began to analyze them. It wasn't long before another wave of fear and dread struck his mind. Blood. Eyes raised to confront the skies, Tama gulped when a horrendous scene began to take shape in front of him. Takashi. There he was, his oldest and most loyal subordinate, hanging lifelessly from the branch of wood above him. His eyes were devoid of life. Nothing was left inside them except for the colors of death. They were staring at him and were blaming him for their owner's state. It was all his mistake. He was the reason why everyone died at the hands of the monster skulking behind him. Kill me. Rape that girl. Death was inevitable. Taka could feel it in his heart. Sooner or later, he, too, was going to die, and that made the whole scenario even more unbearable for him. His life wasn't supposed to end like this. He was supposed to rule this city. Everyone was supposed to be under him, working tirelessly while he enjoyed the fruits of their labors. Girls, they were supposed to be his playthings, existing just to satisfy him and his carnal desires. Then where did everything go wrong? Thud. Brown eyes moved once again in the dark and widened ever so slightly when a naked body, punctured thoroughly in vicious wounds, fell before them. Sozin. Taka didn't even have enough time to weep for his friend, as another body, once again covered in horrid gashes, landed his way. Ray, he murmured, his hands shaking in fear and a perverse sense of anticipation. Everything continued for a while before his mind suddenly remembered the words of the monster and began to work contrarily. Thrill. Forgetting the dreadful fear of death, his heart began to ache with a thrill for what was about to come next. It was wicked and pathetic how he, even on the verge of his death, was more excited about the heinous acts of defiling and violently taking pleasures of a woman's body. Even now, when he was sure he would be killed at any moment, the mere mention of that girl sparked a sense of euphoria and hunger within his heart. He wanted to see and ravish her before the death that was waiting for him at the end of the road could claim him. It excites you, doesn't it? The boy's distinct voice rang inside his ears and gave rise to a hungry smile on his face. The mere thought of touching that girl brings a sense of euphoria, right? Tama nodded his head in agreement. Yes, he was beyond redemption now, and that thought only made everything more exciting. Then grab my hand, Tama. For the first time since he had begun to torture him, the boy showed himself to Tama. I'll guide you to her. Every cell of his body tingled with excitement and awe when Tama's eyes met those golden orbs of bliss. They were beautiful and bewitching. Something Tama noticed immediately when his hand seemingly rose by its own volition and grabbed the hand of the boy. Squelch. It started with a minor irritation but soon became unbearable. Ah! Tama roared in pain when blood spattered out of his palm and began to stain the ground beneath. You fucker. What did you do? He yelled and looked in front, only to gasp when he found no one there. Huh. He tried to move but couldn't. Ah. He tried again but the result was the same. Annoyed and scared, he looked down to unravel the cause of his immobility. No, no, no. Back to Rias it was over. There was nothing she could do to reverse it. Her heart that was wallowing in the beautiful and mesmerizing scenery of the town earlier, was now just beating silently inside her chest, waiting for the inevitable end of her adventure in this cruel world. Rias couldn't even form words to describe what she was feeling. It was plain misery. Consumed in her unbearable thoughts, she realized that her mind was right about everything it had warned her about a while ago. Everyone was the same in her world, greedy and depraved when they needed her but scared and insensitive when she needed them. Naruto was no exception either. Just like everyone in her life, he had left her when she needed him the most. His departure from her life was as abrupt as his arrival. I had at least hoped to see some more of the world before he left though. A pathetic smile bloomed on her lips, and just as she was about to wander off, a familiar voice stopped her dead in her tracks. Rias. Her eyes went wide and her heart stopped beating as soon as his voice entered her ears. It was incredible. So much that for a moment it felt like music to her heart. And Naruto. She stuttered and began to shake lightly with all the emotions that his voice had spurred within her. You can turn around. I have changed my clothes. A smile, a big and very genuine smile made its way to her plump lips. I know, she whispered, still stuttering and not daring to turn around and look him in the eyes, for her mind and poor heart couldn't possibly bear it if reality proved his voice to be a product of her delusions. Naruto, who was standing a few meters away from her, didn't know what was going on and let it slide as another weird characteristic of the girl. After all, Rias was quite an unusual human. There was something different about her, but he couldn't understand what. Okay, he hummed, anyway, What took you so long? Her feeble voice took Naruto by surprise. The food guy took too long to prepare our dinner. Oh. The lack of proper response to his questions and her constant refusal to turn around was making Naruto a little uncomfortable now. Is everything alright, Rias? He couldn't help but ask because a sad companion meant more depression, and more depression was something he wasn't ready to handle anymore. When he started his trip he never thought he would say it, but he preferred the old weird Rias, with whom he had lived in that apartment for 5 days, more than this present Rias. Yes, I am fine. He saw her nod her head, but she still didn't turn around. Cracks were also noticeable in her voice now, and Naruto wasn't someone who could be fooled by a false act of normalcy. Do you want me to leave you alone for some time? I mean, if you want I can.
No. Shining pearls of liquid whipped around in a horizontal arc in the night sky as Rias abruptly turned around to face him. Don't leave me now. She yelled at him, shocking Naruto with her vulnerable voice and her tear-streaked face.
Rias, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I. She fumbled for a second before lowering her head in shame. The silence told Naruto everything he needed to know. Sometimes silence spoke a lot more than some random words. The Hyuga girl, through no proactive action on her own, helped to reinforce that lesson. The food is getting cold, he murmured and interrupted her. If she wanted to keep something secret, then who was he to stop her from doing that? She could do whatever she wanted to do. Also, try to cry less. Rias, you lose a good amount of water and salt when you do that. It's not good for your health, especially when you're on an outing with an unknown individual. It was a random fact that he had learned from Sakura during the war, and he thought Rias needed to know about it more than anyone else. Oh okay. The road they were walking on was one that could easily be termed as desolate from the world and its inhabitants. Aside from the magnificent green trees, small colorful birds, and the raging stream flowing beside the gravel path, nothing else could be seen on it. No matter how far their eyes wandered around, they couldn't see any sign of human life. It was like they were in an entirely different world right now, which was strange because they have yet to enter the deep jungle of Miyagi. At first, they had thought it was transient, and eventually, they would see some humans residing beside the river, but unfortunately, they were proven wrong when they found no one there. Confused and a little concerned, they then ventured to encounter some residents around but discovered that the place had already been abandoned a few years ago by them. Left with nothing to do, they lastly decided to continue their journey to Obanazawa with whatever they had with them.
Obanazawa. Naruto looked over to his companion and began to contemplate a thought that had been troubling him for a few hours now. What's so special about Obanazawa? His mind still couldn't understand why his companion was so excited to visit that town. As far as he had observed her, Rias seemed to be an introverted person, one who didn't like to visit places filled with people and their gibberish, so when she asked him to visit this town with her, he was mildly surprised.
I still don't understand why we are visiting that town, Rias. Finally, after ruminating over it for a while, he decided to give up and ask the girl herself. After all, only she could tell him why she wanted to visit that town. Because it's beautiful, and I am sure you'll like it, Naruto. Ria's crimson hair fluttered gently in the wind as she turned around to face her companion, who was still confused about her plan. A small smile slithered its way to her lips as soon as she saw the confused look on his face. It was amusing, she noted, but didn't voice her opinion out in fear of getting scolded by the boy, something that had become a common occurrence ever since they had left that town. That wasn't a proper answer, not even by a long margin, but Naruto didn't argue against it just for the sake of the smile that was illuminating Ria's face at that moment. It was rare, and he didn't want to ruin it with his stupid arguments. I see, he whispered, trying his best to sound as normal as possible for her, and would have succeeded in it too had he not noticed something odd on Ria's face. Do you need water? Concern sneaked itself into his voice as Naruto stared at Ria's sweat-covered face. Hearing his question, Rias paused her hike and looked at her partner, confused as to why he would ask her that question. Am I looking tired already? She blinked and gently ran a hand over her face, only to cringe when she felt an ample amount of sweat napping there. Embarrassed, she swung her head down and declined his offer. No, she whispered under her breath.
Really? Rias heard him say, but this time she could notice the surprise in his voice.
You are sweating profusely, Rias. You need to drink something, otherwise you will end up being dehydrated. Naruto reached out to his backpack, which she had bought him recently, and pulled out a bottle filled with crystal clear water. Here, he threw it towards her, hoping that she would catch it, but unfortunately for him, Rias wasn't paying attention to the bottle, and so, it ended up falling harshly to the ground.
Thud. The sound of the bottle hitting the ground brought Rias out of her stupor, and in a blink of an eye she was on her way to pick it up from the ground, a little embarrassed by the fact that she was not paying attention to her surroundings. I am sorry, I wasn't paying attention to you.
Naruto waved her worries away as he flung his hands in an uncaring manner, indicating that he was neither irritated nor furious at her. It's okay, Rias.
Rias nodded and finally returned to her position while holding the bottle in her right palm. It was cold, she noticed as her eyes saw the drops of water flowing down the plastic surface of the bottle. When did you buy it? She asked him because as far as she could remember, they had not stopped at any departmental store in the past 20 or something hours, so when exactly did her partner buy this bottle that was still as cold as if it was bought fresh? Her bluish-green eyes wandered over to him and narrowed down when they saw him looking a little lost in his thoughts. Naruto, She called him and scowled when he still didn't look at her. Is he getting annoyed by my questions? She panicked, fearing that she might end up being abandoned because of her stupidity. Just as she was about to drop the subject, her partner opened his mouth. I bought them from that shop which was located near the place where Naruto paused and looked away, making her even more nervous.
A place where? She tutored him to continue. Seeing that she was not going to leave the subject, a defeated sigh left Naruto's mouth. Where you were P. Every sane thought left her mind as she immediately realized just what he was about to speak. I remember it now. She politely stopped him and was more than satisfied when the boy closed his mouth. Also, to prevent any further conversation about the sensitive subject, she deliberately opened the lid of the water bottle and began to savor the fluid as if her life depended on it. Well, it did depend on it in a way, but at that moment, it was only used by her as a defense to avert any possible chat with the boy.
Naruto, who was watching her from the far, couldn't help but sigh at her antics. Ever since that day when he had seen her crying, Rias had been acting a little bit more relaxed and delighted around him. At first, it wasn't a problem because she had every right to whatever she wanted, but soon, when she started to dwell closer to him than needed, things began to take a different turn.
Only 2 days have passed since that accident and she was already behaving like she was his friend. Which she clearly wasn't. For him, she was just a stranger. Someone who would leave his side as soon as they enter Fukuoka, and that's how he wanted it to be. He didn't want to make friends now. He had no need for them, and that's why her constant smiling and sauntering was making him upset. Also, the fact that most of the time they were fake only fueled his irritation because her fake smiles and excitement reminded him of a certain someone.
A boy, clad in nothing but a horrendous orange jumpsuit and a stupid fake smile, running from roof to roof, place to place, and people to people, just to find someone who could appreciate his presence and turn his fake smile into a genuine one.
She reminded him of himself, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's moist eyes widened a little as they saw her smile at him, but as usual, it was fake. His heart sank even deeper when she began to stretch her body with that fake enthusiasm of hers, acting like she was trying to educate her body about the rough surroundings. Yes. Still, he made no effort to stop her because, in the end, everything was going to be useless. Oblivious to everything that was going inside her partner's mind, Rias gave the last stretch to her body and began to walk on the pebble-filled path, but not before seizing a quick peek at Naruto. He had been acting a little different since yesterday. Is it because of what happened the day before yesterday? Nah, she didn't think so, but still, a small part of her couldn't help but think it was the case, so to calm herself, she finally decided to speak about it. Are you still uncomfortable with what occurred that night, Naruto?
If so, then let me assure you that I was not crying because of you. It wasn't your mistake, Rias whispered and was about to smile at him but couldn't when she saw flickers of irritation lingering on his face. Taken aback by his emotions, she closed her mouth and meekly turned her head straight. I am not uncomfortable, Rias. His words struck her heart in an odd way this time because she could no longer feel a sense of neutrality in them. Now, they sounded like they were intended to hurt her. I am just. His words vanished into thin air as he turned his gaze away from her, considering it useless to even speak to her at that moment.
Silence flooded their path and began to consume everything, but before it could devour them too, Rias looked above her shoulder and smiled at him, irritated by me. She asked him and immediately got the answer when the boy refused to glance at her. I see. Her voice receded to a silent whisper. A noise so less that even the sound of insects around them began to overwhelm it. Chirp. Naruto blinked when the melodious sound of crickets chirping entered his ear, melting like warm honey inside him. It was surreal and exhilarating. Squeak. His feet slowed down when the cicadas merged their calls into the hymn of nature. Chirp. Blue eyes vanished behind the eyelids as Naruto lost himself in the melody and began to reminisce about his home, a place that he had left behind accidentally, a place where he wanted to be more than anywhere right now. He wanted to feel that bright sunlight again, wanted to breathe that fresh air again, and most importantly, wanted to feel at home again. Squeak. His heart fluttered in pain and blue eyes glistened with tears when uncountable memories of him wandering around in that village plagued his fitful mind.
Chirp. This melodious song of nature was hitting him right in the heart and he couldn't help but feel sad. The last time he had heard this song was when he was traveling with Ero Sennin, and since then he had only dreamed of hearing it again. Squeak. His eyes twitched a little when the hymn began to sound unnatural to his ears. Chirp. He clenched his hand when the sound began to turn bizarre. What's happening? He thought with a panicked face. How did this hymn become so unnatural suddenly? He looked around himself to find the answer but got none. Squeak. Stop. It was unbearable now. Chirp. Stop. He found himself lost in that bizarre hymn with nowhere to go. Squeak. Naruto covered his ears and fell down to the ground, hitting himself with those sharp pebbles lying there. Stop. His voice immediately overpowered the tormenting vocals of the insect, and in a matter of seconds, the sound vanished from the air like it never existed there. Naruto. His despair-filled eyes opened a little and softened when they saw Rias running towards him. Her face was covered in panic, and her eyes. He gasped when he saw nothing but care and concern in them. Were they for him? He couldn't tell at that moment, but just a glimpse of those eyes was enough to calm him down. They made him feel like someone was there for him, even if that certain someone was just using him to travel to her desired destination. I am fine. Her eyes met his eyes and silenced him instantly. Are you okay? She asked him as she crouched beside him. Now back to a satisfactory position, Naruto nodded his head. Yeah, I am fine, he told her, trying to look as normal as he could. Rias saw the shivering of his hand and scowled. Do you need water? She whispered and pointed to the bottle hanging beside her backpack. It was the same bottle he had given to her earlier, about which she had questioned him foolishly, but this time, Rias was glad he had bought it somewhere during the trip. Sure. A smile appeared on her lips, a genuine one this time. Here, she unrolled the lid and positioned the mouth of the bottle on his lips. Rias immediately realized what he was indicating and was about to hand over the bottle to him, but to her surprise, before she could even do that, Naruto began to devour the water from it. For the next few seconds, Rias just stayed like that, still and smiling, letting the boy drink as much water as he wanted. She was fine being like that if it meant she could help him. As he was gulping down the water, Naruto's eyes accidentally caught a glimpse of the smile on her face, and for a second his throat went dry, even after it was being drizzled with the liquid constantly. It's genuine, he thought to himself as a strange emotion began to swirl within his mind. The more he looked at it, the more comfortable he felt. It was contagious, just like his own smile. Soon, a sense of remorse began to settle down inside him as he realized how cold he had been to her for the past few days. While she was trying her best to make the trip entertaining, he was doing nothing but hurting her by shunning her efforts. Now that he thought about it, Rias was just like those crickets and cicadas. When he had first met her, although she appeared to be weird, she still seemed pretty interesting and fascinating, just like the melody of those insects. But as time went on and days passed away, she began to become irritating, just like how that song started to sound unbearable. At first, he had thought that the problem was with the Rias, but now when he dove deep into the subject, he understood that the problem was with no one but him. After surviving those tragic events of his past, he had stopped celebrating small aspects of life. Things that used to make him immensely happy in the past now no longer made him smile or even crack a grin. It was like he was already dead before dying. But it isn't wrong. Naruto. He gasped when her voice reached his ears and hauled him back to reality. After inhaling a much-needed breath, he looked at her and immediately scowled when he saw her still smiling at him. What was wrong with this girl? Why are you? He sighed, irritation palpable on his face when she interrupted him for the 1000th time that day, but his irritation soon turned into surprise as she placed a hand over his mouth and wiped out the remains of water from there. You spaced out again, Rias whispered, looking a little cautious about what she was speaking this time, something that made Naruto even sadder. It was because of him why she was being so hesitant, as she didn't want to irritate him further with her words. And you were looking like a dead. Her hesitation motioned Naruto to speak out. Dead body, he whispered, appearing completely calm when she looked at him in surprise. Why yes, Rias nodded her head. Well, it'll be one very soon, so what difference does that make? He joked, or at least tried to, but realized that he failed miserably when the girl stood up from her position and began to walk away, leaving the water bottle in his hand. Rias. He whispered her name, but neither did she turn around nor did she respond. It was like she became angry out of nowhere. Maybe she doesn't like jokes about death, he thought with a sad frown on his face. He shouldn't have made that stupid joke. Are you going to sit there all day long? Naruto didn't need to be told twice. In a blink of an eye, he stood up from the ground and began to follow her. Ooh. Rias was miserable as they walked through the dark and uneven path of the forest. They had been traveling the path for the past hour, yet all she could think about was what Naruto said just before they started walking. Truth be told, the past few days that she had spent with him were one of the best days of her life. Why? Because with him, she didn't need to act and be all prim and proper like a noble lady. For him, she was a normal girl, and that was all that mattered to him. Unlike other people who she had met in her life, he neither asked her about where she came from nor did he question anything about who she was. He just let her tag along, despite knowing nothing about her, and it was with him that she could forget about everything and just be herself. However, her mind just couldn't stop replaying that single sentence. Well, it'll be one very soon, so what difference does that make? Although Naruto had tried to pass it off as a joke, Rias knew better. Once they reached their final destination, she knew that Naruto's journey would end forever. Over the past few days, she had started to forget about the circumstances that she was in. She would even be so bold to say that she had started to feel more comfortable around him and even considered him as a friend. Despite the unusual circumstances regarding their first meeting, he had really started to grow on her. The way that he didn't treat her with any awe or pity really made her feel at ease. It had always been one of her dreams to be treated normally by people, and this boy beside her had done all that she wanted in a mere few days. But that won't last long. In the end, Rias would still be alone and likely die alone in this world. The only bit of light she had found in this world after so long would leave far before she would be found by those bastards of the underworld. She didn't like it at all. She didn't want to see the only person she considered as a friend to die. Rias didn't know it, but that was the true reason as to why she had wanted to go along with Naruto. The fact that he had chosen to rob her instead of any other easier target made her feel special in a twisted sort of way. She knew that the neighborhood she was in was a very wealthy one, and she knew for a fact that many of the houses in the area had no security at all. From a single glance at him, she could tell that he was fairly experienced in fighting from the way he held himself. From that, she could easily deduce that he was a veteran robber, and no experienced robber would go after a person who clearly had a guard with them, not when there were so many easier targets with guaranteed payoffs. The fact that he stood beside her even though she was basically a stranger to him only affirmed her belief that she meant something to him. There was no human robber out there who would stay beside someone who had the interest of the Yakuza. Robbers were first and foremost people who cared for themselves over anything. That single action massively increased her levels of trust for the man who was walking beside her.
Her goals had now changed. She would no longer wait to be found and taken back to the underworld. She was now determined to make sure that Naruto would not die alone. It was the least she could do for someone who willingly took a stranger like her alongside them, and didn't abandon her even when they were threatened by the Yakuza.
With those gray thoughts in her mind, Rias resumed her walk.
After a few more minutes of walking, they finally found what they were looking for, a naturally carved and abandoned road that could be used to reach their primary destination Obanazawa, a place she wanted to visit quite badly because of its natural beauty. Rias, the red-haired girl, turned her head a little and glanced at her partner. Yes? She grumbled, eyes still fixed on the road in front, appreciating its charm. It was a beautiful road, decorated with plants on one side and a river on the other. From the look of it, the river didn't seem to be that deep and was flowing rather gently compared to what they had seen in the past few days. Do you need water? For the second time on that day, Rias found herself at a loss for words as her partner began to search for the water bottle in his bag. Am I sweating again? She immediately placed a hand on her forehead and sighed in exasperation when beads of sweat tainted her fingers with their moisture. Aye. She tried to form some sort of response to his question but failed miserably. Great, just great. Now he's going to think that I am one of those rich brats who can't even walk a few kilometers without sweating. Seriously. Why was she sweating so much? She mentally screamed at herself. Naruto, who was watching her from the sides, was ready to throw the water bottle at her but stopped when he noticed signs of stress and annoyance on her beautiful face. Are you okay, Rias? Was the first thing that immediately left his mouth, indicating that he was worried about her health. Yes, I am fine, she grumbled, still irritated by the fact that she couldn't do anything about the sweat. It was making her mad now. Naruto shook his head, denying her false claims of assurance. She was not fine. He could see that. Her body was drenched in sweat and seemed like it would give up at any given moment. You are not looking fine to me, Rias, he argued back. Really? He nodded his head. Of course, Rias, you are losing a lot of water through sweating and I am worried that you might end up fainting during the walk, he explained, unaware of what he had just spoken to the girl. Rias would have argued back but halted her tongue when she realized just what he had spoken to her. Worried about me? She whispered, surprised by the fact that he would say something like that to her. He was worried about her. But why? Why are you worried about me? Her bluish-green eyes looked at him for an answer. The boy closed his mouth and began to look around himself, trying to find something interesting to divert his attention from her. Naruto? He cursed inwardly when she called out his name again. Why yes? His eyes sauntered to her face and twinkled in discomfort when they saw how hopefully she was looking at him for an answer. Damn it. He cursed his motor mouth for speaking something so stupid for no reason. There was no need for him to say that. Aye. His lips quivered in anxiety when she smiled at him slightly. Where are we going anyway? In the end, he didn't have the courage to hurt her again, so he did what anyone at his place would have done. He changed the subject. Just like that, the smile disappeared from her lips. Obanazawa. I see. With that said, both of them resumed their journey to the town of Obanazawa, neither of them daring to break the silence that had fallen upon them after that conversation. Ooh, it's amazing how places like these have still managed to remain safe from us humans, Rias whispered to herself, taking another jump across the small stream of water. Naruto hummed from behind, watching her every step carefully. Rias smiled a little when she reached the other side of the stream and immediately turned around to see where her partner was. You said you were hungry, right? She asked him. Yes, Naruto murmured as he soon joined her on the other side, a little surprised by the fact that she still remembered his words from hours before. Well, according to this map there must be a small restaurant located somewhere around here, so if you want we can stop there and have our lunch. Sure. Naruto wasted no time in answering and began to follow her when she started to walk in a random direction with the map flailing wildly in her hands. After a minute more of walking and wandering around, they found what they were looking for. Hidden between two huge trees was a small cottage that had food, inscribed on a wooden board hanging on the top of it. As they saw the different paintings of delicious foods hanging around the cottage, their feet began to move on their own, and before their mind could even register what was happening, they found themselves in front of the entrance of the shop. Looking at each other for one last time, both of them gently flicked the soft flaps of the door and entered the shop. Welcome to my small food corner, children. A grumpy-sounding voice echoed throughout the small cottage, startling both of them as they sat down on the empty seats located beside the table. Overcoming their shock, they lifted their heads and saw that the owner of the shop was a fairly old man, wrapped in familiar kitchen apparel. What can I serve you today? The man asked them, sounding as excited as he was before.
Naruto was the first to answer. Miso ramen, he murmured, eyeing the picture of ramen on the menu as if it was the most precious thing in the world at that moment.
Rias followed him shortly. Miso ramen. She smiled at the old man, ignoring the look that Naruto was giving her. She knew what he was thinking, but she didn't care because ramen was one of her favorite foods too. The owner of the shop returned her smile with one of his own. Okay, miso ramen it is. He is an interesting man. Naruto couldn't help but notice the happiness that was practically oozing out of the man's face. Rias agreed with her partner. The old man seemed quite happy for a man his age. Yeah, she murmured, her eyes fixed on the man who was preparing their food with a contagious smile on his face. Why? Why is he so happy? From the looks of it, he seems lonely here, yet he is so happy. To say Rias was taken aback by Naruto's question would be an understatement because her partner usually doesn't talk that much to her, especially about themes associated with happiness and loneliness, because she tried to answer his question but found herself incapable of doing so. She didn't know the old man enough to answer her partner's question, and even if she knew, she herself was very unfamiliar with the concept of happiness. It was something that had left her side a long time ago. Because Naruto looked at her and sighed when he saw her lost in her own thoughts. Because I appreciate everything that happens in my life. Both the team gasped when the old man himself decided to intervene in the conversation and answer Naruto's question. Appreciate. Naruto growled at the old owner, startling Rias, who was sitting beside him. What did he mean by appreciating everything? How could he appreciate what fate had done to him? Bullshit. This man knows nothing. He calmed down, knowing that his anger would get him nowhere. The man didn't even flinch at Naruto's small outburst. Yes, his weary eyes regarded Naruto with the utmost affection they could muster. You may not agree with me right now, boy, but I am sure you'll remember my words in the future when everything turns out how you want it to be. Naruto again scoffed at the man's words, finding no sense in them whatsoever. Future, he mumbled, oblivious to the fact that Rias was staring at him and was looking very concerned for some reason. I don't have any future, old man. Huh. The man stopped whatever he was doing. I said I don't have any future here, old man. This world is not for me and it won't be long before it'll vanish from here forever. A suffocating silence enveloped the cottage within its potent grasp. Thud. Naruto almost fell from his chair when Rias abruptly threw her chopsticks at the ground and left the cabin. Rias. He tried to stop her but the girl ignored his calls and kept walking away. The hell is wrong with her? He thought to himself as he began to pick up their bags. I think you have made her upset, boy. Naruto paused whatever he was doing for a second and glanced at the old man. I know, I am not blind, he whispered as he tugged the bags on his shoulders, groaning when the burden of the luggage finally settled on them. Leaving his utensils behind, the old owner of the shop walked over to his counters and smiled at the boy. Unlike his previous smiles, this smile was filled with nothing but sadness. She was crying, you know. The sad smile on his face deepened when he heard the boy gasp at his words. See, crying? Yes, the man answered. Is she your girlfriend? Naruto hesitated for a moment, but shook his head to deny the case. He didn't know why he even hesitated about it. Maybe because Rias was crying for me. He shook his head to clear his thoughts. A girl like Rias would never cry for a person like him. Maybe, goddammit. He cursed under his breath as he nudged his chair back and strode towards the door, following after Rias. Outside the shop, Rias? Rias. Naruto called out desperately as his eyes wandered around the establishment to trace clues leading to his silly companion. Where is she? Even with his experienced eyes, he couldn't see her anywhere. which surprised him a little as it should not be that hard to find someone in this small clearing. But then again, without his friend Kurama, his senses had become a little dull. He was the guy who used to take care of them, but that war took him away from him too. But it's not about Kurama anymore. Right now, I should be thinking about Rias, lost in the ocean of concern. Naruto didn't even notice that he was actually starting to feel something other than apathy and sadness for the first time since entering this world. Damn it. Realizing that she was all alone in the jungle and he wouldn't be able to find her in his current state, Naruto tapped into his chakra and gently closed his eyes. Soon everything became bright and vivid as a beautiful shade of orange color surrounded his eyes, giving them a surreal look. There, he shouted in his mind as his eyes picked up the unique energy of Rias. Now that he knew her location, Naruto wasted no time and began to sprint as fast as possible towards the back of the shop where she was sitting alone. Rias, he called as he reached his destination. Rias. His eyes softened a little as they saw her sitting silently on a fallen log while her beautiful hair covered her face from the eyes of the world. After staring at her for a few more seconds, he saw that her body was shaking, and it didn't take him more than a second to comprehend that she had been in this state for quite some time. He didn't know what to say as he was feeling terrible because he knew he was the reason behind her current state. Sighing, he sat down beside her. Rias, I am Naruto didn't get to finish his apology as he was cut short by Rias. Can you stop talking about your death so much? I really don't like it. As soon as she finished her words, Naruto felt irritation rise within him again, but this time
it was directed towards himself. If only he had been considerate of her feelings and not made those stupid jokes, then maybe he would have never been involved in this situation. I am sorry about those jokes. Rias, I'll make sure to not do that again in the future. He apologized, but not before adding his own thoughts about the whole situation. Also, you should stop taking my words seriously. Rias, I am a stranger to you, one who will never meet you again after this short trip. As Naruto finished voicing his thoughts, Rias sat up straight, brushed her hair aside, and looked directly into his eyes. I can't. Her answer was short and simple but not satisfying according to Naruto. Why? Because you are not the only one who wants to die. Naruto, I have tried doing it way more times than you but couldn't finish because I am a coward who can't even take her own life.
And I thought it'll remain like that forever, but then I met you. You wanted to die just like me, and I thought by tagging along with you, I might be able to muster up the courage to do it too. Silence filled the clearing as Rias finished describing her reason for wanting to follow Naruto. Her eyes went wide as she realized what she said in the heat of the moment, and her face immediately turned forlorn as she retreated into herself.
Naruto, who was sitting beside her, was faring likewise, speechless at the revelation. She has the same goal as I do. He knew from the moment they met on that mountain, she was almost as broken as he was, but to the same extent of wanting to die as well. That was something he did not see coming.
Confused and stunned, he was about to ask her why, but Rias sensed what he was about to do and stopped him by raising her hand in a plea. Please don't ask, I don't want to talk about it.
Naruto heeded her request and stayed silent. Now that he knew that Rias was just as suicidal as he was, he thought back to when they had first met and came to some very uncomfortable conclusions. Her husband isn't a nice person. In his old world, he had seen numerous occasions of people almost in the exact same circumstances as she was. Her wedding ring, her expensive clothes were likely just there for show, and her groom, he probably didn't care a single bit about her well-being, because if he did, she would not be sitting here beside him right now. The more he thought about it, the more he began to feel sorry for her, especially for the cold treatment he had given her today.
Before his thoughts could take any darker turn, Ria's peaceful voice sliced into his thoughts. Can you act normally until our trip is finished? Rias whimpered as she tearfully looked into Naruto's eyes again. Please Naruto, it's my last wish to at least be happy before I.
Rias didn't get to finish her sentence as Naruto placed a firm hand on her shoulder and began to speak, something that she wasn't able to hear because she was too lost in his eyes at that moment. They were looking a lot more beautiful than earlier, especially with the orange streaks that were surrounding them. I am sorry, could you repeat that? She mumbled as her eyes looked away from those mesmerizing orbs.
Naruto blinked at her. You didn't hear me just now? He asked her and felt the heat crawl out to his face when she swayed her head in declination. I said. He trailed off as his eyes began to shy away from her. Why, you said? Knowing that he needed to speak to her, he swallowed the embarrassment and looked back at her. I said. He paused for a breath. I'll try my best to act normally from now on. Rias felt her sadness dissipating as she heard Naruto's answer, but that loss of sadness was soon replaced by confusion when she saw Naruto squat down in front of her, his back towards her and his arms behind him as though carrying something. What are you doing? Rias asked, no doubt surprised by the sudden change in his personality. In response, Naruto just sulked further in embarrassment. What does it look like? I am offering you a piggyback ride, of course, he mumbled. Rias felt her face turn red as she started stuttering out denials. This is too sudden. One moment, they were all sad and the next, he was offering her a piggyback ride. As if sensing her indecision, Naruto started talking again. Rias, you wanted your last moments to be happy, right? Why not let this be your first? Besides, you look very tired, and I don't want you to walk anymore in that condition. Rias' red face turned redder as she heard what Naruto said. Indeed, she was very tired and she was sweating quite a bit. Having someone to carry her around did sound nice, and it would be at least one happy memory. Unseen to Naruto, her face formed a smile as she clambered onto his back. Alright, Naruto whispered as he began to walk away from the cottage, completely oblivious to the fact that they forgot to have their lunch. The wildlife around the path was mesmerizing. Small streams of crystal clear water, luscious green trees, small bushes flailing gently in the breeze, and the wide exotic varieties of animals were only adding more to the beauty of the trail. Rias, being an avid lover of such a living atmosphere, couldn't control her enthusiasm and was having the time of her life watching the unreal beauty of the forest around them. As her partner jumped from one stone to another, her whole body trembled and her eyes occasionally flickered to her side to appreciate the sense of peace that the beautiful forest was providing her.
It's so beautiful, she almost shouted in awe and fastened her hold around her partner's neck. I know. Her eyes curved up as she smiled at her partner, one who had been carrying her on his back for hours now. Are you tired? She asked him jokingly, not expecting any sort of an answer to her stupid question.
No, he surprised her with his answer and even more so when he adjusted his hands beneath her thighs and began to walk faster. I am all okay, he added in a soft voice, his words sounding as sweet as honey. Rias hummed in response but her eyes never left his face. It had started to sweat now and she couldn't help but feel a little worried about him. He had been walking like that, with her on his back, for hours now. Even a stamina freak would get tired after that. Do you need water? She asked him. Naruto stopped abruptly and looked over his shoulder. Are you trying to make fun of me? His question earned a gasp from Rias. Of course not. Why would you think that? His blue eyes observed her for a while before turning back to the trail in front of him. I thought. He paused as red flared on his cheeks, one that didn't go unnoticed by Rias, and soon everything began to click in her mind. He, she couldn't stop a soft chuckle from escaping her mouth. Naruto scoffed at her. Why are you laughing now? He grumbled, lips almost forming an adorable pout. What? Her chuckles got even louder. Stop, in answer. Rias untangled her right hand from around his neck and placed it gently on his forehead. You are sweating, Naruto. I am scared that you might end up with dehydration. Feigning an expression of concern, she whispered to the boy, remembering very well how he had poked fun at her about her lack of stamina yesterday. Naruto sighed as he finally understood what she was trying to do. Fine, if you want me to rest then sure, I'll take a rest. Rias would have smiled at him more had he not surprised her with his next move. Wah! She screamed in shock when she was dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Opening her eyes a little, she immediately glared at the boy. OWW, it hurts, you know. She groaned, her voice exhibiting slight bits of annoyance and anger. What? Naruto asked, looking as clueless as he could at that moment. I think you told me to rest and that's what I am doing, Rias. Rias could have sworn that she saw a speck of a smile on his face at that moment. It was full of pride and jest, something that made her both happy and angry at the same time. Oh really? She snapped at him. Eyes twitching wildly, the red-haired girl scoffed at the boy. I never told you to drop me like that though. Her complaint earned her a small smile from the boy and she couldn't help but gush about how elegant it was, a perfect blend of charisma and cuteness. Her musing came to a stop when she felt someone sit beside her. Surprised, she looked to her right side and was quite surprised to see Naruto sitting there, staring at her as if she was one of the most fascinating things in the world for him. Now she was silenced by the boy when he raised his hand and placed it under her chin. His voice sent shivers up her spine, something that he must have not noticed, otherwise he would have stopped right there. After all, he wasn't the type of person who intrudes in someone's private space for no reason. Hell, he had barely shown any interest in her until an hour or two ago when Shed told him that she liked ramen too. You know what? Her eyes flickered away from his eyes. What? She squeaked, a little unsure about what was going on in his mind. Was he going to demand something lewd for her now? After all, it was their last trip and people do stupid things when they realize that they're about to die. Naruto regarded her for a while before standing up again, leaving behind a stunned Rias who was now uttering nonsense about how he's teasing her for no reason. Stand up, Rias. No. The boy glanced in her direction and sighed when he saw her lying carelessly on the ground. Fine. With a shrug to his shoulders, he whispered. Wait. In a second, Rias was beside him and was looking at him with those hopeful eyes of hers. What? You can't leave me alone, she argued, and why can't I do that? She stared at him for a few seconds before looking down at the ground. I don't know. Her whisper sounded miserable, something that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto. Rias. Bluish-green eyes perked up at her mention and widened in surprise when they saw Naruto crouching a few meters away. What are you doing? She knew what he was doing but still, she asked because she wanted to hear it from his mouth. To answer her, Naruto looked above his shoulders and blinked his eyes, a gesture enough to make her smile again. I am offering you a piggyback ride again, he grumbled in his own weird way, sounding neither too happy nor too sad. Why? I can walk now. An unknown emotion unraveled on Naruto's face, an emotion that Rias couldn't decipher no matter how hard she tried. It was unreadable. Because I walk faster, he finally responded, giving her what could be termed as an acceptable answer.
Hey, I can walk at a good pace. I don't want you to carry me like a sack again, she retorted back. I know. Then why are you still sitting like that? Come on, stand up. We have a long way to go before we reach our destination.
Naruto didn't budge from his spot and stayed in a crouched position. I won't stand up until you accept my ride, he whispered, sounding relatively serious for an argument so small. Now Rias was truly surprised. Why are you so inclined to offer me a ride? I can walk on my own, Naruto. She wasn't joking because her legs were totally fine now and she was sure she could cover up a long distance without exhausting herself. Because I like it when you rest your head on my shoulders and fall asleep. It feels nice for some reason, even if he had tried his best. Naruto was sure he couldn't have come up with a more formal way of explaining his dilemma to his companion. It was strange, he knew, but there was nothing he could do about it. Her soft snoring, her sleep talking and the warmth that she oozed made him happy for some reason. It was just because of that he had been carrying her on his back for so long, otherwise there was no reason for him to do something so silly with a married girl. Hearing no response from her, Naruto slowly looked over his right shoulder, worrying what he might end up seeing on Ria's face. From the very beginning of their trip, he had made sure to not cross any line with her, but now he was sure he had probably done just that. The anxiety on his face increased promptly when Rias began to stride towards Naruto. For a second his mind went numb when she stopped in front of him and laid her eyes on his face. Let's go. A comfortable silence fell upon the surroundings as she gently wrapped her arms around his neck and plopped her chin on his shoulder. Rias silenced him with a soft nudge on his shoulder. Don't say anything, just start walking. A small smile appeared on his dry lips. Also, I like sleeping on your shoulders too, so don't feel weird about it. Of course, it was a lie. The rides on his back, while being a little entertaining, were still not something that she cherished to no end, but at that moment, Rias just wanted to see him smile. If being carried around like this was what it took to see his smile, then she was ready to be carried around through the whole trip. Stop stealing my ramen. Rias whined, slapping Naruto's chopsticks away and scooping up the whole bowl of ramen for herself. Huh? Naruto blinked at her, trying to look as innocent as he could. Rias immediately understood what he was trying to do. No, Naruto. Don't try to act innocent now. Eyes narrowed down, she smirked at him. Innocent. The boy titled his head. Why would I act innocent? I have done nothing wrong, he argued back. Don't lie. Her shout startled everyone around them. I saw you grabbing pork and noodles from my bowl a couple of times. You can't fool me, Naruto, she huffed, her hands now resting beneath her chest. Seriously. Did he take her for a fool? She was a lot smarter than she appeared on the outside. Naruto regarded her for a while before turning his gaze to the startled customers. I am sorry, he hurled a quick apology towards them. As you should be. Now eat. I was not talking to you, Rias. Red erupted on her cheeks as she looked around and realized what was going on. The eyes of the customers made her even more embarrassed. Ahem, I see, she whispered and resumed eating her delicious bowl of ramen. A smile appeared on Naruto's lips as he stared at her red face. It looked cute, he noted. How could someone hate her? He couldn't understand. With a personality so warm and a face so beautiful, Rias was one of the most interesting girls he had ever been with, so the thought of someone hating her didn't sound right to him. I want to die too. Just like that, the smile disappeared from his face. Rias wanted to die too, he thought to himself, when she had first told him about her plan. For a very good amount of time, Naruto couldn't even believe what he was hearing. A girl that beautiful and happy shouldn't be having thoughts like that. Well, at least that was what he thought at that moment, but as their trip progressed, he came to realize that she wasn't any different from him. Just like him, Rias had lost something very important to her. How did he know? Well, Rias is an avid sleep talker. Whenever she had fallen asleep on his shoulders, he had heard her whisper names that he was not familiar with. Akano, the most common name he had heard from her mouth, and the way she whispers that name, Naruto could easily determine that it belonged to someone very close to her. A part of him wanted to confront Rias with these names, but the rational part of his mind had always stopped him from doing so. There was no reason for him to do that. Those names were Ria's secrets, and if she wanted to keep them hidden from him, then so be it. He would always respect her decision. Naruto. His eyes twinkled with surprise when her warm voice entered his ears. He looked at her and blinked when he saw her trying to avoid his gaze for some reason. Rias kept trying to avoid his gaze for a while more but soon gave up, sighing tiredly. She shoved a big delicious piece of pork into his mouth. "Are you happy now?" she asked, ashamed of the attention their little interaction was getting from the nearby customers, who were now smiling at them. Naruto gasped. What? He squeaked with a mouth full of pork and fish broth. I saw your dazed face and thought that you were sad because I didn't let you eat pork from my bowl, she whispered, looking very embarrassed about what she had just done. Oh. Everything finally clicked inside his mind. Rias nodded, head still down in embarrassment. Yes. Peeved. A small laugh escaped from Naruto's mouth. You are so amusing, Rias. His words made the girl's face even redder. Here, he abruptly took out a sliced piece of tomato from his bowl and leaned across the table, holding the glistening tomato in front of her mouth. You like tomatoes, right? He asked and began to twirl the tomato piece in front of her lips. Rias stared at the broth-dripping tomato for a moment, before leaping at it like a predator. She trailed off with driblets of broth surrounding her rosy lips. Delicious. She finished ecstatically as Naruto stared at her face for a while more, enjoying the smile he was seeing there. Our ramen is always delicious, Rias-san. Do you want more? A voice asked delightfully. Rias jerked up and saw that the owner of the voice was none other than the middle-aged owner of the restaurant, who was standing on the other side of the counter, giving her a look that emanated nothing but warmth and care. A look that resembled her brother to a great extent. Overwhelmed by emotions, she turned her head down to hide her timid face. Well, there's no reason we can't eat more, she said impassively, trying her best to hide the sorrow in her voice. Naruto caught the change in her voice. Bring one for me too. I can't let her eat alone, otherwise she will end up messing something up, he ordered the owner, who for some reason, was still looking at Rias, making him a little skeptical. Hearing his words, Rias fake glared at him and scoffed. How many times do I have to tell you, Naruto? I don't mess up anything. Her complaint echoed around the silent restaurant, making her wince at the insincerity of her words.
Naruto slumped at her outburst. I can clearly see that. His eyes were emanating nothing but disappointment. Also, try to be more civil around others next time, he added in a whisper, making sure that other occupants don't hear him. In response, Rias smiled smugly at him. Look who is saying. A guy who tried to rob me as soon as he met me, she mocked him, and to add salt to the wound, stuck her tongue out at him. Her smile widened when she saw the embarrassed look on his face. She couldn't control herself and began to laugh at him. Now who is more civil? Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw his right hand gliding towards her face, speculating that he was going to hit her for making fun of him. Rias tried to veer away from the strike, but unfortunately he was faster than her. Realizing that there was no escape now, she waited for the inevitable strike.
Rias waited, and waited. Then to her utter surprise, instead of making an overwhelming impact with her face, Naruto's hand simply caressed her lips.
There was a noodle on your face. Rias' mind went numb for a second. Oh, she murmured silently, condemning herself for even thinking that he would hit her. So you want to travel to that boring onsen first, or want to see those cool mountains with me? Naruto asked, leaving little to no choice for her, except for following his wish. Knowing that he wouldn't visit the onset first anyway, Rias went with the second option. I want to see those cool mountains with you, she replied. Naruto nodded, no doubt pleased with her answer. Cool, so then finish your ramen quickly. I want to visit the top of the mountain with you. People on the street were saying that the view of the town is spectacular from there, he said, his voice doing little to nothing to hide his enthusiasm. Are you both in a relationship? Rias and Naruto stopped whatever they were doing as soon as they heard the owner's question. Looking at the man, an embarrassed Rias was first to answer, and well, she at least thought she was, but Naruto beat her in that. Yes, I have promised to remain by her side till the end.
A deafening silence consumed the atmosphere of the store. Top of the mountain, it was dark outside. The gorgeous sun was concealed behind the dense shrouds of uncountable clouds which were presently drizzling the town with their cold water. All the beautiful streets of the town were empty, filled with only a thin pane of water and the sound of it fleeing on the cold foundation of stones and dirt. The whole city was looking lifeless yet gorgeous in a strange way. It was as if someone had taken all the living elements out of the said place to somewhere else. All that could be heard and seen was the tattering and flowing of the cold water. The mountains that surrounded the beautiful town were wrapped in a cloak of fog and lush greenery. Gusts of gentle cold breeze were rippling through the dense jungles of the mountains, making the leaves of the trees dance in the soft harmony of nature. Everything was serene and stunning. In the far opening of those beautiful mountains, the duo of Rias and Naruto was relishing the downpour. Naruto,
who had been walking tirelessly around the vast town for a while, was finally enjoying something. He didn't know whether it was because of such beautiful surroundings or the company of the girl standing beside him, but he was certainly enjoying the moment. Speaking of the girl, Rias too was captivated by the whole thing. Never in her life had she witnessed a rain this amazing. Everything about it was incredible. The lush greenery covered in the mist around them, the gently pelting water in the ravine below them, and the dulcet humming of the insects. It's amazing, she whispered, her eyes following the droplets of water that were falling from the dark sky. Naruto nodded his head. It certainly is. I have never seen anything this beautiful, he said as he placed himself on the edge of the ravine to take a better look at the river. Never knew rain can be so fascinating. You know, a small smile materialized on his lips when a drop of cold water caressed his cheek, falling to the ground soon after. Rias, why are you standing there? Come here. You wanted to see the river, right? He piped when his eyes caught her standing alone in the rain. Flustered by his words, Rias soon followed the motion of her companion and positioned herself beside him, staring at the river down below with a sad smile on her face. The rainfall was bringing back some sad yet sweet memories out of the broken closet of her heart, memories of her and Akano enjoying the rain in Kuo, dancing and wandering around the town without any boundaries. Her friend and she were so innocent back then, didn't even know and care about what was going to happen in the future. At that time, all they looked after was how many droplets of water were trickling down their faces and who was the better dancer in the rain. Akano loved these heavy rains, and Rias was certain that her friend would have done anything to be here with her. She would have played with her, danced with her, and most importantly laughed with her. Akano, tears rolled down her wet cheeks as she recollected the sweet memories of her best friend, one who refused to leave her side, even when she tried to push her away. Are you crying, Rias? Naruto queried, head tilted in confusion. Caught off guard, Rias immediately looked away from her companion to hide her tearful face. How did he know I was crying? She thought as she wiped her wet face, something that was totally unnecessary because the rain again spoiled it with water. Nothing, I was just thinking, she stuttered and cringed forth with her own behavior when Naruto stopped her. It's okay if you don't want to share it with me, we all have something that we don't want others to know, so don't worry, I won't force you to say something that you don't want, he assured her, looking completely serious about the issue. A fragile smile was Rias' response to Naruto. Thank you, she whispered. Normally, a smile from her wouldn't have any effect on Naruto, but at that time, something stirred inside his heart. The red hue of her lips concealed in the translucent mist and pelting was a sight to behold, and he couldn't control his stupid mouth this time. Your smile looks beautiful in rain. You know, a whisper escaped his lips, and without any warning, he leaned over and gently flicked off wet red hair away from her face. Thunder roared through the clouds and illuminated the whole sky, which in turn made her red face more noticeable to his deserted eyes. What? Rias gasped in surprise when Naruto's cold fingers squeezed the pale skin of her face, tugging it upward slightly. See, now you are looking fine, Rias, Naruto whispered as he stared at her scarlet face, trying to devour it as much as he could at that moment. It was the most beautiful thing he had seen in a long time. A smile suits your face, his eyes twinkled with an unknown emotion, so try to smile as much as you can. At that moment, everything vacated Rias' mind. Oh okay, she squeaked and tilted her head so that she could rest it on his palm. It felt nice. They stayed like that for a while before Naruto decided to break the silence. Do you want to visit the onsen now? And no. Then, we can visit the onsen tomorrow. For now, I want to stay here with you and enjoy this rain. Lost in his thoughts, Naruto was unable to see the delighted look in her eyes. Turning to her, he gently nodded his head. He mumbled. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye. Thank you for watching.